Chapter 2171. Mu Xian's expression turned extremely ugly when he saw Dao Xuanyi had recovered his strength. They had always been very afraid of Dao Xianyi because they knew that Dao Xianyi had always been suppressing his strength. But now, Dao Xuanyi had recovered his strength, and with the infinite divine ruler in her hand, he wasn't worried about Yi Xian's life or death, but the life or death of the entire middle world. Once the middle world's quintessence was destroyed, the impact on them would be fatal. Dao Xuanyi's sect had been destroyed, so he didn't care, but they had to care. Stop Dao Xuanyi? Mu Xian immediately rejected the idea. Dao Xuanyi didn't care anymore. If he stopped her, she might go crazy and hit him, and that would be embarrassing. Mu Xian turned to look at Yi Xian in the distance. What if Yi Xian disappeared? Mu Xian's gaze gradually turned cold. In the distance, Yi Xian held the green profound sword tightly in his right hand. His bloodline aura was still rising madly, but compared to Dao Xuanyi's current aura, it seemed very weak. Dao Xuanyi looked at Yi Xian in the distance, slowly clenched his right hand, and without a word, he directly punched. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! A wave of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian and his sword were instantly thrown into a boundless spacetime abyss. Although this punch was only aimed at Yi Xian, the world around him instantly became illusory. At this moment, a huge dragon suddenly appeared in the depths of the starry sky. It looked down at Dao Xuanyi, and its voice carried a terrifying pressure. Supreme Xuanyi, did you destroy this world? Super spiritual vein. The huge dragon before him was the leader of the 36 spiritual veins, the spiritual dragon. Dao Xuanyi glanced coldly at the spiritual dragon. Today, I'll only kill one person. Supreme spiritual dragon, don't provoke me. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Yi Xian in the distance, and without a word, he punched again. In the distance, in the boundless spacetime abyss, Yi Xian suddenly took a step forward, drew his sword, and slashed. One sword slashed the past, one sword slashed the present, and one sword slashed the future. 3 swords combined into one. Boom! As soon as Yi Xian's sword fell, 3 sword lights exploded in front of him. Yi Xian retreated again. Moreover, when he stopped this time, his physical body was annihilated without a sound. He couldn't block it. Dao Xuanyi stared at Yi Xian, whose soul seemed to be a little illusory. I know your background isn't simple. Why don't you call for help? In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the green profound sword trembled slightly. In the next moment, his soul burned. Soul ignition. Seeing this scene, Dao Xuanyi's eyes narrowed slightly. What's the point of constantly overdrafting yourself? As soon as she finished speaking, her body slowly floated up, and she clenched her right hand tightly. In the next moment, she vanished on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly turned into a blood-red sword light and disappeared on the spot. Qi! The boundless abyss of space and time had suddenly started to burn. It couldn't withstand their strength at all. Dao Xuanyi's fist smashed onto Yi Xian's green profound sword. The green profound sword trembled violently, and a powerful force directly passed through the green profound sword to Yi Xian's soul. Boom! Yi Xian's soul instantly floated away like a piece of paper. However, at this moment, 2 sword lights appeared at the back of Dao Xuanyi's head and throat. Dao Xuanyi's expression was calm as he pressed his right hand down lightly. In an instant, an invisible force directly shattered the 2 swords. In the distance, Yi Xian's soul was still burning. Although his aura was getting stronger and stronger, and it was even stronger than when he burned his bloodline, his soul was also becoming more and more illusory. He couldn't defeat her. Even if he burned his bloodline and soul, he still couldn't defeat the woman in front of him. The gap between their strength was too huge. If this woman punched him again, his soul would definitely be destroyed. At this moment, Soul suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Young lord, we'll meet again in the next life." As soon as it finished speaking, the green profound sword suddenly turned into a sword light and entered Yi Xian's soul. In the next moment, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from the green profound sword and spread out from Yi Xian's soul. It was devouring the green profound sword. To be more accurate, the green profound sword had self-destructed and voluntarily allowed itself to be devoured by Yi Xian. Because Yi Xian could devour swords. At this moment, the completely crazed Yi Xian seemed to have sensed something and suddenly trembled. In the next moment, he suddenly roared, "No!" His voice was filled with endless fear. He wasn't afraid of the enemy, but he was afraid that his loved ones had disappeared. The green profound sword was devoured on its own. In an instant, Yi Xian's aura directly erupted like a volcano. Boom! In an instant, the surroundings were completely ignited. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Dao Xuani in the distance. In the next moment, he charged over like a madman. There was no sword. At this moment, he was the sword. In the distance, Dao Xuani's expression was calm. He opened his palm, and the infinite God ruler appeared in his hand. He waved it lightly. Boom! The originally burning world was instantly extinguished. A ruler's shadow directly shook the charging Yi Xian. Boom! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted. Yi Xian and Dao Xuani retreated rapidly at the same time. This retreat directly took both of them hundreds of thousands of feet back. After Yi Xian stopped, rays of sword light continuously condensed around him. In the distance, Dao Xuani had just stopped when a sword suddenly slashed down from above her head. Dao Xuani opened his palm, and the infinite God ruler in his hand suddenly flew up and directly shattered the sword. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her. Dao Xuani's pupils suddenly shrank. Since when did Yi Xian's speed become so fast? At this moment, Yi Xian's speed was at least 10 times faster than before. At this moment, Dao Xuani suddenly understood. Yi Xian had concealed his strength. No, he had concealed his speed. When his bloodline and soul were ignited, all aspects of Yi Xian's abilities were greatly enhanced. However, he had concealed his speed, and she had actually overlooked this. Therefore, at this moment, when Yi Xian absorbed the energy of the green profound sword, he stopped concealing his speed and caught her off guard. Most importantly, since the moment he ignited his bloodline, Yi Xian had been constantly suppressed by her. This caused her to subconsciously lower her guard. At this moment, Dao Xuani was unable to guard against it. Yi Xian used his right hand as a sword and directly stabbed into Dao Xuani's abdomen. Boom! Before everyone's eyes, Dao Xuani's physical body instantly shattered. However, at almost the same time, Dao Xuani's finger swiped at Yi Xian's eyes. Hiss! Both of them retreated explosively at the same time. When Yi Xian stopped, his eyes were gone. Not only that, but his soul was so illusory that it was almost transparent. In the distance, Dao Xuani's physical body was destroyed. Not only that, but there was also a sword stuck in her body. Although it was not the green profound sword, Yi Xian had used the soul fixation sword, and this sword directly suppressed Dao Xuani's soul. In the distance, Dao Xuani's eyes flashed ferociously. Immeasurable. As soon as she finished speaking, the immeasurable God ruler above her head suddenly fell and then entered her body. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from Dao Xuani's body. In the next moment, the sword in her soul actually started to dissipate bit by bit. In the distance, Yi Xian's soul was also illusory. He did not dare to attack again because his current soul condition was even weaker than Dao Xuani's. He also started to recover his soul. Both of them chose to recover their souls. At this moment, countless experts in the middle world were extremely shocked because the battle between Yi Xian and Dao Xuani was too terrifying. The middle world could no longer withstand their strength. Countless earth veins had shattered, and underground magma had surged into the ground. This was only secondary. In some places, the spiritual energy had already started to dry up. The middle world's origin had been severely damaged. If this continued, the entire middle world would be destroyed. In the distance, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared beside Mu Xian. This person was the other supreme expert of the middle world, Mist Shan. At the same time, he was the sect master of another supreme sect, the Divine Cloud sect. Mist Shan glanced at Dao Xuanyi and Yi Xian in the distance, and his face was slightly gloomy. At this moment, the spirit dragon sovereign suddenly transformed into a middle-aged man and appeared beside Mu Xian and Mist Shan. The spirit dragon sovereign looked coldly at Yi Xian and Dao Xuanyi in the distance. "Are you sure you won't stop them?" Mu Xian and Mist Shan fell silent. Stop them? If they could, they would have done it a long time ago. The spirit dragon sovereign looked at Mu Xian and Dao Xuanyi. It won't be long before they recover again. At that time, they will start fighting again. As for the current situation in the middle world, you should know better than me. If this continues, the middle world's origin will be completely destroyed by them, and it might even cause the spiritual energy to dry up. No, it will definitely cause the spiritual energy to dry up. Both Mist Shan and Dao Xuanyi's faces turned slightly unsightly. The spirit dragon sovereign continued. Look, the countless earth veins in the middle world have started to collapse. If this continues, their strength will completely destroy all the earth veins in the middle world. It isn't just the earth veins, even the countless spirit veins in the middle world won't be able to withstand their strength and will be destroyed. At that time, our spirit hall leaf will be affected. As he spoke, his gaze gradually turned cold. Once there are no more earth veins and countless spirit veins here, I'll take the supreme spirit veins of our spirit hall and leave the middle world. Mist Shan and Mu Xian's expressions instantly changed when they heard this. The reason the spirit energy in the middle world was so dense was because of the 36 supreme spirit veins, and the reason the 36 supreme spirit veins were left in the middle world was because the middle world had the advantage of the natural earth veins and spirit veins. They could nourish the middle world, but they also needed the middle world to nourish them. They were complementary to the middle world. Once the 36 supreme spirit veins left, then at least 80% of the spirit energy in the middle world would instantly vanish. After that, the spirit energy in the middle world would dry up, and it wouldn't be long before the entire middle world would dry up and become a deathly silent universe. At this moment, Mu Xian suddenly said, "We can't let them continue fighting." Mist Shan looked at Mu Xian, and Mu Xian looked at Dao Xuanyi and Yi Xian expressionlessly. One of them must die. After a moment of silence, Mist Shan asked, "Who?" Mu Xian looked at Dao Xuanyi. "It's too dangerous to choose her, because if she doesn't die, once she goes crazy and takes revenge." As he said this, he looked at Yi Xian, who was recovering his soul, and said, "He must die." Mist Shan said, "Do it." As soon as he said this, he and Mu Xian charged at Yi Xian. Obviously, they wanted to kill Yi Xian. Chapter 2172. Two supreme exalts had attacked at the same time. How could Yi Xian resist them? He couldn't resist them at all. Not to mention his current state, he wouldn't be able to resist them even if he was at his peak state. Right at this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Yang Nianxue. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Yang Nianxue's eyes. She opened her palm, and the sword palace suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot forward. It exploded. The sword hall exploded apart while countless rays of light erupted like fireworks. Mist Shan and Mu Xian were blasted back by the rays of light, and Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue had vanished when they finally stopped moving. Mu Xian and Mist Shan's expressions became extremely unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Mist Shan stared fixedly at the scene in the distance. He can't be allowed to live. They were fearful of Yi Xian as well because he was able to fight an exalted realm expert at such a young age. So, how terrifying would he be if he was allowed to grow? Actually, both of them were slightly regretful right now. Why did we interfere in this matter? Or perhaps, we could have done it in a different way. For example, we could have gotten a scapegoat to do it for us. Yet now, not only had they failed to kill him, they'd even formed an irreconcilable enmity with him. Mist Shan suddenly said, "He can't be allowed to live. Pursue him." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. On the other hand, Mu Xian charged forward as well. The expression of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's branch president, Yu Xian, instantly became unsightly when he saw Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue flee. Actually, he didn't want Yi Xian to flee as well. Yi Xian was an extraordinary VIP of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. According to the rules set by the pavilion master, he should protect Yi Xian with all his might. However, he'd chosen to watch from the sidelines just now. If Yi Xian had been killed, then the pavilion master would definitely not pursue the matter any further. After all, it wasn't worth it for a dead person. But now, Yi Xian had fled. The situation had changed again. After a long moment of silence, Yu Xian suddenly said, "Wu, ask your men to track him down." He paused for a moment and added, "At all costs." He was talking about Yi Xian. The middle-aged man called up Wu spoke solemnly. Yu Xian said softly, "There's no way back. Once he dies, no one in this world will know that he is a distinguished guest of my Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Of course, if you find his whereabouts, don't make a move. Just contact Mu Xian and Supreme Mist Mountain and do them a favor." Wu fell silent for a moment, then he turned and left. In terms of intelligence, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was incomparable to the other factions. In terms of intelligence, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion was incomparable to the major powers. Somewhere in the star field, Mu Xian and Lan Shan stopped. Their faces were extremely ugly. Wu and Wu Xian. Time to see. Their divine consciousnesses swept the surrounding star zones and the universe, but they did not find Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue. Lan Shan's face was extremely gloomy. How did they do it? Mu Xian shook his head. That woman possesses an extremely large number of mystical items. She's surely using some sort of divine item to conceal her aura. Lan Shan suddenly asked, "Who are these two people?" Both of them were stunned when they heard this. Who are they? They've overlooked this question. They're definitely not from the medium world. If they are, they would know. Supreme Xian Yi should know. Lan Shan said. They glanced at each other and vanished. When they reappeared, they were in the sky above the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Xian Yi was still there. Mu Xian looked at him. Supreme Xian, who's that young man? Dao Xuani glanced at Mu Xian, then disappeared from the spot. Mu Xian frowned and looked at Lan Shan. What does she mean? She's ignoring you. Lan Shan said. Mu Xian said solemnly, "We are helping her." Lan Shan shook his head. It doesn't matter who he is. Since we attacked him, we've sowed karma. If we don't want him to take revenge on us in the future, then we should deal with him before he leaves the city. A trace of worry flashed in Mu Xian's eyes. I'm worried that he has a powerful force behind him. Lan Shan furrowed his brows when he heard that. How could he not be worried? Meanwhile, Mu Xian shook his head. Let's not think about that. Since we've sowed karma, then let's face it calmly. What's there to be afraid of? He roared with laughter. Why should we fear anyone when our sects join forces? Hearing this, Lan Shan nodded. Indeed. Mu Xian said, our top priority now is to find those two and kill them. As soon as he finished speaking, he and Lan Shan vanished on the spot. The 9th floor of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Actually, no one had expected that Yang Nianxue didn't flee with Yi Xian. Instead, she brought Yi Xian to the 9th floor of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, the pavilion that belonged to the pavilion master. The most dangerous place was the safest. Of course, she'd used a divine object to conceal her and Yi Xian's auras. After Yang Nianxue entered the 9th floor with Yi Xian on her back, she glanced at the surroundings casually, and then placed Yi Xian on the ground. At this moment, Yi Xian's soul was still very weak. Yang Nianxue looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was still exuding a terrifying murderous intent and evil aura. However, this murderous intent and evil aura were all suppressed by a tree core. The divine tree of life's tree core. She'd obtained it from an old man with a bamboo chest. It was capable of suppressing many evil existences. The killing intent and vicious aura belonged to the category of evil. Because of the divine tree of life's tree core, Yi Xian's mind was gradually returning to normal. After a long time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. Yang Nianxue asked softly, "Are you okay?" A trace of confusion flashed in Yi Xian's eyes. After a long time, he said softly, "Soul is gone." Soul. He just tried to contact Soul, but Soul had vanished completely. Yang Nianxue fell silent. She knew that Soul had followed Yi Xian for so many years, so their feelings for each other were definitely very deep. Yang Nianxue sighed softly. She hadn't expected that things would develop to this extent. She'd always thought that Tianming would intervene, but this time, he didn't. Did something happen to him? A trace of doubt arose in Yang Nianxue's heart. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Xiao Ta." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Ta appeared in front of him, and Yi Xian directly entered Xiao Ta's body. Healing. Reconstructing his body. Yang Nianxue walked to the window and looked down. At this moment, experts from the two sects were flying through the city from time to time. She knew that the two superpowers, the Cloud God sect and Tianyi sect, were madly searching for her and Yi Xian. Besides that, the members of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's branch had been mobilized as well. Their targets were her and Yi Xian. Yang Nianxue frowned. Wasn't little brother a super VIP of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Is this super VIP really that low in status? As if she'd thought of something, Yang Nianxue suddenly turned to look at her surroundings. The 9th floor wasn't very spacious, but it was very elegant. There was a long table and a chair not too far away from her, and there was a bookshelf on the other side. Besides that, there was nothing else in the room. The pavilion master. She was quite curious about the pavilion master as well. After all, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's business wasn't ordinary, and it had businesses throughout the universe. Yang Nianxue walked slowly to the bookshelf and picked up an ancient book. However, she'd never seen the words written on it. It's not from this world. Yang Nianxue frowned. She flipped through some more books, but they were all unfamiliar words. Yang Nianxue placed the book back on the bookshelf and walked slowly to the table. There was an ancient book on the table, and she understood the words written on it. Yang Nianxue picked up the ancient book and saw 3 words, Theory of the Universe. Beside the book was a pen. However, this pen was different from the pens in this world. It was rather short, and the tip of the pen was very, very sharp like a needle. A trace of surprise flashed in Yang Nianxue's eyes. This pen is quite unique. As she spoke, she flipped open the first page of the Theory of the Universe and read softly, "What is the universe? It is the general term for all space, time, and matter." Seeing this, Yang Nianxue was silent for a moment before flipping to the second page. Space is boundless, time is boundless, and matter is boundless. When the 3 combine, it becomes the universe and the great Tao. It's completely possible to cultivate the way of godhood with science. Yang Nianxue hurriedly flipped to the next page. When she flipped to the next page, she was immediately stunned. There was a line of words on it. "Sister, it's not good to barge into someone else's study without the owner's permission and peek at their books." Yang Nianxue's eyes were filled with disbelief. The other party actually knew that someone was here to peek. Yang Nianxue flipped to another page. "Still want to read? Hee, I won't let you read it." Yang Nianxue continued to flip. "You really want to read it? If you answer correctly, I'll show you the secret code." Yang Nianxue flipped to another page. "The Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger." Yang Nianxue's expression froze. What secret code is this? She flipped to another page, but it was completely blank. There was nothing at all. Yang Nianxue closed the ancient book and fell silent. She had to admit that she was slightly shocked at this moment. She suddenly realized that she seemed to have underestimated this mysterious master of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. What exactly is his background? At this moment, young Nianxue suddenly turned around. There was a black box on the side of the study table. Young Nianxue originally wanted to open it, but she seemed to have thought of something and stopped. Her actions just now were slightly offensive. A short moment later, young Nianxue placed the box back to its original position, and then she placed the ancient book back to its original position. She glanced at the surroundings, and a trace of complicated emotions flashed through her eyes. This pavilion master isn't simple at all. Without thinking too much, young Nianxue was about to enter the Xiao Ta. At this moment, Yi Xian walked out from the Xiao Ta. At this moment, his physical body had completely recovered. Not only had his physical body recovered, but his soul had also recovered. After all, the flow of time in the Xiao Ta was different from the outside world. Young Nianxue asked softly, "You're done?" Yi Xian nodded. Young Nianxue said, "Then let's go." Young Nianxue suddenly looked around and walked to the bookshelf. He glanced at it and frowned slightly. He couldn't understand it. Young Nianxue was about to say something when Yi Xian suddenly waved his right hand and moved the entire bookshelf into the Xiao Ta. Then, he walked to the study table and moved the table and chair into the Xiao Ta as well. Young Nianxue's face darkened. "Brother, this isn't good." Yi Xian's face was expressionless. "I have the Xiantian token, so I can take anything in the Celestial Treasure Pavilion." Young Nianxue was speechless. Everything in the world had karma. She didn't know if it was a good or bad karma. Chapter 2173. On the 9th floor, young Nianxue said in a low voice, "Brother, what are your plans?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "What plans can I have?" "Fight to the death, of course." Young Nianxue wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian looked at young Nianxue. "Sister, you want to say that we can't beat that woman, right?" Young Nianxue nodded. "That woman's strength is beyond our imagination. Moreover, the other two supremes are on her side. Not only that, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion seems to be on their side as well. The situation is very disadvantageous for us." As she spoke, she paused for a moment before continuing. "What I mean is, we have to temporarily avoid the brunt of the attack." Yi Xian was silent. He naturally understood young Nianxue's meaning. The siblings were no match for that woman. If they went to look for her, they would be sending themselves to their deaths. Young Nianxue continued, "We can go find Dad." Yi Xian shook his head. "I will take revenge myself." As he spoke, he opened his palm and small tower appeared in his hand. Yi Xian looked at young Nianxue. "Sister, you can hide our auras, right?" Young Nianxue nodded, "But not for long." Yi Xian asked, "How long?" Young Nianxue said in a low voice, I'm afraid they will use some secret technique to find us." Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then he entered Xiao Ta. Time. What he needed now was time. Yi Xian came to a mountain peak, and he looked into the distance, his eyes a little dazed. When he fought with Dao Xian, not only did he ignite his bloodline, but he also ignited his soul. In the end, Xiao Han even let him devour it, but he still couldn't beat his opponent. This was the most despair he had ever felt. Xiao Han. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, his heart was still bleeding. At the same time, the bloodline in his body suddenly trembled, about to explode. Young Nianxue appeared beside Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian. "Control your bloodline. The current you doesn't need to go crazy, you need to calm down, unless you want to call for help." Call for help. These two words were like a needle stabbing into Yi Xian's heart. He didn't know when it started, but whenever he ran into trouble, Qing'er would always lend a helping hand. Over time, he became more and more fearless. Because he was fearless, he became more and more flashy. This time, however, Qing didn't make a move. This was the first time he tasted despair. True despair. Even if he risked his life, he still couldn't change the outcome. This was how cruel the world was. Most of the time, you wouldn't necessarily get a satisfactory result just because you worked hard and risked your life. Yi Xian clenched his fists and forced himself to calm down. Anger was a sign of incompetence. Only an incompetent person would do something as meaningless as anger. After a long time, Yi Xian's blood gradually calmed down. Yang Nianshua's heart ached as she looked at Yi Xian. She knew that Soul's disappearance was a huge blow to Yi Xian. Xiao Ta didn't say anything else. This time, it was also a huge blow to it. In history, it and Yi Xian were in such a miserable state. Not only was Yi Xian hopeless, it was also in despair. That woman was really strong. Even when Soul took the initiative to let Yi Xian devour, Yi Xian's strength skyrocketed, he still couldn't do anything to her. Actually, it wanted Yi Xian to call for help more than once, because in its opinion, only Master and Tian Ming could kill that woman. However, it knew that Yi Xian wouldn't call for help. Because the current Yi Xian had already started to hate his flashy self. Flashy? It wasn't impossible. But, you must have the strength. Just like Dad, wasn't Dad also flashy? But Dad had the strength. Using a saying from the secular world, many times, the fart of a rich person was fragrant. Strength. Yi Xian took a deep breath. After self-reflection, he started to ponder. How could he defeat that Dao Xian? Strength? Even with his physical body and the green profound sword, he still couldn't defeat his opponent, let alone now. Divine power? Slash the past, slash the present, and slash the future couldn't do anything to him. After much thought, Yi Xian realized he had no chance of winning if he fought against his opponent. Even if he burned his soul and bloodline, he still would not win. Moreover, his intuition told him that Dao Xian still had some reservations. There was only one way left. Call for help. He could continue to be the second generation. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's lips suddenly curled up into a self-deprecating smile. Other than calling for help, what else could he do? At this time, Yang Nianxue walked to Yi Xian's side. She lightly patted the dust on Yi Xian's collar, and then said softly, "Don't blame yourself. Big sister will help you." Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue, and Yang Nianxue smiled slightly. "I can't defeat that woman, but I can help you become stronger." Saying that, she opened her palm, and 10 storage rings appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yang Nianxue looked at Yi Xian. "This is all of Big Sister's assets. Among them, there are some that Dad gave me, some that Little Bai gave me, some that Mother gave me, and some that I cheated myself. Oh, no, I earned myself. Now, I'll give them all to you." Yi Xian shook his head slightly. "Big sister, I'm afraid I won't be able to make it at the last minute," Yang Nianxue suddenly said. "Brother, do you know what you're not as good as Dad?" Yi Xian fell silent. Yang Nianxue looked straight at Yi Xian. "Dad will never give up under any circumstances. Do you know how desperate Dad was when he faced heaven's will? 10,000 times more desperate than your current situation. Do you know how miserable we were back then? That year, Tendo and those divine beasts were instantly killed by heaven's will. Auntie Tian Xiao and Qi Bai Tian died in battle. 2 of heaven's will clones died in battle. Arya's soul was almost destroyed. Even senior Xiao Yaozi, who had never been defeated, couldn't even draw his sword when facing heaven's will. Dad was even hung up and beaten. But even so, Dad didn't give up. He really didn't give up. He can die, he can cry, but he will never give up easily. He won't give up until he dies." Yi Xian fell silent. Yang Nianxue said again, "I also feel very desperate when facing that Dao Xian Yi, but shouldn't we give it our all? At least we're still alive now." Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Suddenly, he slapped himself hard in the face. "Pa!" The sound of the slap resounded throughout Xiao Ta's world. Yi Xian's expression was terrifyingly calm. "Big sister, you're right. I'm still alive, why should I give up? How can I give up? As he spoke, he gazed at the spatial rings in front of Yang Nianxue, and then he said, which ones are useful to me? Yang Nianxue said, all of them. Yi Xian nodded. He swept the spatial rings with his divine sense, and it didn't take long for all the divine treasures within them to enter his sea of consciousness. He instantly knew which ones were useful to him. A short moment later, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a heart appeared in his palm. Yang Nianxue said, this is the tree heart of the divine tree of life. I obtained it from an old man who carried a bamboo box. Yi Xian nodded, and then he withdrew a white jade bottle. The white jade bottle contained Arya's blood. Yi Xian gazed at Arya's blood in his hand, and he pondered in his heart. I have to attain the eternal immortal realm first. Only when my body is immortal, soul is immortal, and will is immortal would I be able to fight that woman. Because once I attain that realm, my strength will become even stronger after I ignite my body and soul. If I want to kill that woman, then I can only fight with my life on the line. I intend to ignite my body and soul directly. Yi Xian took out Arya's blood, and then he poured a drop down his throat. He was rebuilding his eternal immortal body. For the sake of suppressing the formidable strength within Arya's blood, he'd even swallowed the tree heart of the divine tree of life. Only with the tree heart suppression would he be able to slowly absorb Arya's blood. This time, he didn't just swallow a single drop, but all 12 drops of blood within the bottle. This was Yang Nianxue's idea. Because his eternal immortal body was completely useless against Dao Xian Yi, and his body had to be even stronger. Otherwise, it would still be shattered by Dao Xian Yi. Besides Arya's blood, Yi Xian had also devoured countless treasures of heaven and earth. All of these treasures had been collected by Yang Nianxue in the past, and every single one of them was truly priceless. There were some that she couldn't bear to eat herself, such as the tree heart of the divine tree of life. She couldn't bear to eat it. It had to be said that watching Yi Xian eat her treasures of heaven and earth like he was eating cabbages, Yang Nianxue's heart ached a little. But when she remembered that he was her biological brother, she didn't think about it anymore. Biological brother. In fact, she hadn't spent much time with Yi Xian. The two of them hadn't been together since they were young, so it was impossible to say how deep their relationship was. But in the end, blood was thicker than water. Moreover, she still felt a little guilty towards Yi Xian. Because the green-robed man had let Yi Xian grow, but he had raised her generously. Since she was born, she had almost never suffered any hardships. After a long time, Yang Nianxue collected her thoughts. Looking at Yi Xian, whose body was slowly transforming, she said softly, "Brother, do your best." Time passed bit by bit. Yi Xian's physical body had completely transformed. His physical body had once again reached the immortal level. However, it was not over yet. He was constantly pushing his physical body. He wanted to push his physical body to the limit. His own limit. Or in other words, the limit of the immortal realm. Of course, it was painful. In fact, it was painful from the beginning. Arya's blood was no joke. Even with the tree heart of the divine tree of life suppressing it, he still felt like his body was immersed in scorching lava. However, this bit of pain was nothing to him. At this time, Yi Xian's body was slowly tearing apart. Seeing this scene, Yang Nianxue frowned slightly. What's going on? Yi Xian's body was tearing apart, but after tearing apart, it quickly healed, and then tearing apart again. This process repeated. Yang Nianxue said solemnly, "Qualitative change. Qualitative change." After Yi Xian's body reached the immortal realm, it underwent another qualitative change. What was the body above the immortal realm? Yang Nianxue didn't know. Because she didn't cultivate her body. At this time, Yang Nianxue's expression suddenly changed. The next moment, she left Xiao Ta and returned to the 9th floor. At the door, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Someone was coming. Chapter 2174. Who is it? Yang Nianxue stared fixedly at the staircase in the distance, and she slowly clenched her right fist. Right at this moment, a woman walked up to her. Yang Nianshue's face instantly sank when she saw the woman. Dao Xuanyi. This woman actually found me. Dao Xuanyi gazed at Yang Nianxue. Where is he? Yang Nianxue fell silent. Dao Xuanyi stared at Yang Nianxue in silence. Yang Nianxue suddenly smiled and said, "How did you find me?" Dao Xuanyi didn't speak. She slowly clenched her right fist, and then an invisible force enveloped Yang Nianxue. At this instant, Yang Nianxue sensed the aura of death. At this moment, Dao Xuanyi was at his peak state. Yang Nianxue was just about to speak when Dao Xuanyi suddenly punched at her. This punch was swift like a thunderclap, and it carried monstrous might. In the distance, Yang Nianshue's eyes narrowed slightly. She opened her palm, and a tiny wooden figure that held a sword appeared in her hand. Right when she was about to activate the tiny wooden figure, she suddenly noticed to her astonishment that the space before her had become illusory, and the terrifying force of Dao Xuanyi's punch had actually vanished without a trace. When Dao Xuanyi's punch arrived before Yang Nianxue, it had become soft and powerless. Both of them were stunned. What's going on? Both of their eyes were filled with disbelief. Meanwhile, Dao Xuanyi punched again, and a terrifying force instantly surged out from her fist. This punch was capable of shattering the heavens and the earth. However, in the blink of an eye, the force of that punch vanished completely, and it was another soft punch. At this moment, Dao Xuanyi's pupils constricted slightly. She turned to glance at the surroundings, and only now did she notice that this place was slightly strange. Yang Nianxue noticed it as well. The space here seemed to be different from the outside world. Meanwhile, Dao Xuanyi slowly closed her eyes. In an instant, the space around her rippled like water. After a long time, she seemed to have noticed something, and she frowned. Yang Nianxue glanced at Dao Xuanyi with a slightly strange expression. Her intuition told her that Dao Xuanyi couldn't break through the restrictions here. This restriction was definitely set up by the mysterious Pavilion Master. However, wasn't Dao Xianyi and the mysterious Pavilion Master equally famous? Right at this moment, Dao Xuanyi suddenly opened her eyes. She opened her palm, and the infinite ruler appeared in her hand. In the next moment, she suddenly smashed the ruler forward. This ruler fell, but there was no movement. Dao Xuanyi's eyes narrowed slightly while her expression was rather unsightly. Right at this moment, she seemed to have noticed something, and her pupils constricted abruptly while she hurriedly blocked with the ruler in her hand. Boom! A powerful force suddenly crashed onto Dao Xian's long ruler. Bang! Dao Xianyi was sent flying and crashed into the wall. However, the wall was not damaged at all. The entire 9th floor did not move at all. Rebound. She had just swung her qi, and it had all rebounded back to her. Yang Nianshue's expression turned slightly solemn when she saw this. It was too strange. In the distance, Dao Xuanyi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes turned grave. Meanwhile, Mu Xian and Lan Shan appeared here as well, and both of them were stunned when they saw Yang Nianxue. Mu Xian was about to attack when Lan Shan stopped him and gestured for him to look at Dao Xuanyi. Mu Xian gazed at Dao Xuanyi, and he was stunned when he saw the blood on the corner of Dao Xuanyi's mouth. Meanwhile, Yang Nianxue suddenly smiled and said, "Looks like the owner of this study doesn't like others fighting here." Dao Xuanyi gazed at Yang Nianxue. She didn't attack again, and she just closed her eyes slowly instead. The space around her gradually started to become illusory. Obviously, she intended to deal with the spatial restrictions here. As for Mu Xian and Lan Shan, they noticed something unusual about the situation here as well, and a trace of shock could be seen in their eyes. The mysterious Pavilion Master. Actually, they'd met the Pavilion Master in the past. All those years ago, when the Immortal Treasure Pavilion intended to open a branch here, the Pavilion Master had gone to them and asked for their help. They naturally didn't agree so easily. So, they'd fought the Pavilion Master, and the outcome was a draw. That was why the Pavilion Master of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion was said to be equally famous as Dao Xuanyi. It was because they thought that the pavilion master was an expert on the same level as them. But now it would seem like that wasn't the case at all. The pavilion master had concealed his true strength. Meanwhile, Dao Xuani's hand started to wave about swiftly, and the space here actually started to split apart and reform. Everyone watched as the space before Dao Xuani was split apart once more, and then Dao Xuani's hands moved faster and faster while the space here was changing faster and faster as well. However, Dao Xuani's countenance had turned slightly pale. Suddenly, the space within the study started to tremble violently. Yang Nianshue's brows knit together slightly. Is it about to be dealt with? Meanwhile, Dao Xuani suddenly pressed the fingers of his right hand together and tapped forward. Just this tap alone caused the space within the study to instantly ripple like a pebble that had fallen into water. Dao Xuani's expression suddenly eased up. Looks like it's been dealt with. Right at this moment, the space here suddenly split apart like a cube, and then it swiftly rearranged itself. In the next moment, their expressions changed drastically because they noticed that their cultivations were actually plummeting. In just a short period of a few breaths of time, their cultivations had dropped to 0. Moreover, all of them had become ordinary people at this moment. Ordinary people that were completely helpless. It was too terrifying. All of them were stunned. What's going on? Dao Xuani's eyes were filled with disbelief. Spacetime backtrack. Spacetime backtrack. Mu Xian and Lan Shan gazed at Dao Xuani when they heard this, and then Lan Shan spoke solemnly. Miss Xuani, what does spacetime backtrack mean? Dao Xuani's eyes were filled with disbelief. It means that we've returned to the past and returned to the time when we were at our weakest. Such a divine ability. I'm afraid even the temporal master isn't able to accomplish it. Spacetime backtrack. Lan Shan and Mu Xian's expressions had become unsightly. How could it be played like that? Wouldn't that make them invincible in the world? Damn it. Lan Shan gazed at Yang Nianxue. Is the pavilion master protecting them? Mu Xian shook his head. I don't think so. It's the problem here. The pavilion master doesn't want anyone to fight here. The 9th floor. They knew that the 9th floor was where the pavilion master resided, and even members of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion weren't allowed to come here. Obviously, the pavilion master didn't want anyone to fight here. Dao Xuani gazed at Yang Nianxue in the distance with a calm gaze that carried killing intent. Yang Nianxue didn't speak. If you're weak, then don't act tough. If you can't win, then be a little cowardly. You won't suffer a loss. Meanwhile, Mu Xian spoke abruptly. Go look for Yu Xian. He's the branch master here, so he definitely has a way. Both of them turned around and left once they finished speaking. Dao Xuani didn't leave. She was in the study, and there was a trace of confusion in her eyes as she looked at the surroundings. The pavilion master. Actually, she hadn't met the pavilion master in the past. However, everyone said that she and the pavilion master were once the two most capable women in the mid-world, and they were equally famous. Now it seemed like how ironic it was. The pavilion master's ability to use spacetime far surpassed hers. They weren't on the same level at all. Dao Xuani looked at the surroundings, and the confusion in her eyes grew. At this moment, she suddenly understood why her master had asked her to seal her cultivation. One couldn't be too complacent. It was like a cup, if it was too full, then it couldn't hold anything new. There was no limit to learning. There was no limit to martial arts. There was no limit to Dao. You say you're strong, but there's always someone stronger than you. Dao Xuani slowly closed her eyes. After a long time, she slightly bowed towards the inside of the study. This was respect. She wouldn't fight here anymore. After retreating to the door, Dao Xuani's cultivation level instantly recovered. At the same time, her aura suddenly skyrocketed. Seeing this scene, Yang Nianshue's expression instantly became extremely unsightly. Brother, this woman actually broke through. Damn it, I'm having a mental breakdown. Breakthrough. After Dao Xuani suffered a setback, not only did she not sink into depravity, but her state of mind broke through, and her strength increased by another level. What was a monster? This was a monster. What was a true expert? Those who could remain unfazed by honor and humiliation, and those who knew shame and bravely fought back were experts. All the hardships and difficulties in the world were stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. Outside the door, Dao Xuani's aura became stronger and stronger. Although there was no movement in the study, the outside was already boiling. The entire midworld was boiling. Supreme. What was a supreme? After eternal immortality was the supreme. Supreme was the meaning of the limit. It meant that one's physical body, divine soul, and will had reached their own limits. Under such circumstances, a person's physical body, divine soul, and will had reached an extremely terrifying level. It could be said that a supreme's physical body, divine soul, and will had already broken through their own limits. To achieve eternal immortality was not especially difficult, but to reach the limit, that was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Reaching the limit and reaching the limit, those were two different concepts. In the celestial treasure pavilion, Mu Xian and Lan Shan suddenly raised their heads. When they saw Dao Xuani breaking through, their minds went blank. Broke through? Just like that? It had been 1,000 years since they reached the supreme level, and in these 1,000 years, they were still the supreme level. Because to break through again was too difficult. One must know that they had already reached their own limits in all aspects. Under such circumstances, to break through again was simply too difficult. And now, Dao Xuani actually broke through? Just like that? At this moment, both of their expressions were extremely unsightly and complicated. At this moment, Lan Shan slightly shook his head. Actually, she's well prepared. Mu Xian fell silent. After Dao Xuani reached the supreme level, he left the solitary mystic path and traveled alone. Moreover, he sealed his strength and left for hundreds of years. Now that the opportunity had arrived, it was normal for him to break through directly. Even so, their hearts were slightly sour. From this moment onward, Dao Xuani was above the supreme level. In the celestial treasure pavilion, when Yu Xian found out that Dao Xuani had broken through, he was extremely excited. Yu Xian laughed madly in the room. Fortunately, he was glad that he didn't choose to help Yi Xian. Otherwise, the celestial treasure pavilion would be gone. He'd made countless decisions in his life, and at this moment, he felt that this decision was the wisest one he'd ever made. Chapter 2175. Above the Supreme Exalt Realm. Dao Xianyi's breakthrough shocked the entire medium world. After all, the strongest expert in the medium world was only at the Supreme Exalt Realm, yet Dao Xianyi had actually attained the Supreme Exalt Realm. Dao Xianyi was a Supreme Exalt now. Yang Nianxue's expression was extremely unsightly. Damn it. Why is Dao Xianyi getting stronger and stronger? Meanwhile, Mu Xian and Lan Shan appeared at the door, and they looked at Dao Xianyi with hesitation. Actually, they wanted to ask how Dao Xianyi had broken through, but they realized that it would be too abrupt. Dao Xianyi wasn't on the same level as them now. Meanwhile, Lan Shan suddenly said, "Supreme Xianyi." When he spoke up to this point, he suddenly laughed bitterly. Dao Xianyi had surpassed the Supreme Exalt Realm, so it wasn't appropriate to address him as Supreme. Dao Xianyi paid no attention to Lan Shan, and he just stared at Yang Nianxue who was in the room. Lan Shan suddenly said, "Supreme Xianyi. With your current strength, are you able to break through the restrictions in this room?" Dao Xianyi shook his head. Lan Shan and Mu Xian's expressions became heavy when they witnessed this scene. Even a Supreme Exalt can't break through this restriction? Exactly how terrifying is the mysterious pavilion master? Meanwhile, Yu Xian arrived by their side, and he bowed slightly to Dao Xianyi. "Supreme Xianyi." Dao Xianyi was expressionless. "Is there a way to make her come out?" Yu Xian hesitated for a moment and said, "No." Yang Nianxue's eyes instantly lit up when she heard this. On the other hand, Dao Xianyi and the others frowned. Yu Xian laughed bitterly. The pavilion master once said that no one from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is allowed to enter this room, and we dare not go against the pavilion master's words. Meanwhile, young Nianxue suddenly smiled and said, President Yu, that's not right. Yu Xian looked at young Nianxue. Young Nianxue smiled and said, according to what I know, my little brother is an extraordinary VIP of your Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and according to the rules of your Celestial Treasure Pavilion, all of you should protect him. However, not only did all of you not protect him, you even helped an outsider deal with him. TSK. President Yu, aren't you afraid that your pavilion master will get even with you for doing this? Yu Xian smiled and said, Miss, according to the pavilion's rules, we should protect young Master Yi, but we have to act within our means. For young Master Yi to provoke such a powerful opponent, my Immortal Treasure Pavilion is really helpless. Young Nianxue smiled faintly. President Yu, my brother has the mysterious heaven token, and I heard that not just anyone can have it. One must have the mysterious heaven token's approval, right? Yu Xian looked at young Nianxue. Yes. Young Nianxue blinked and didn't say anything else. Yu Xian spoke solemnly, Miss, please leave my Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Young Nianxue smiled and said, I won't. Yu Xian frowned, Miss, this is my Celestial Treasure Pavilion's territory. Young Nianxue shrugged. I'm not leaving. Hearing this, Yu Xian's expression instantly darkened. Miss, do you think that if you don't leave, we won't be able to do anything to you? Young Nianxue immediately became wary. Yu Xian suddenly said, there are restrictions in this house that will suppress our cultivation. We are suppressed, but aren't you also suppressed? Hearing this, young Nianxue's expression darkened. Indeed, her cultivation was suppressed now as well. Yu Xian suddenly said, Men. As soon as the voice resounded, 10 men appeared. Yu Xian looked at young Nianxue, everyone's cultivation is suppressed, so it's a competition of numbers. As he spoke, the men behind him were about to enter the house. Meanwhile, Dao Xuani shook his head. Yu Xian and the others looked at Dao Xuani, and Dao Xuani said softly, Don't offend this pavilion master. Mu Xian wanted to say something but hesitated. Lan Shan said solemnly, Supreme Xian Yi, the longer we delay, the more changes will happen. Dao Xuani fell silent. Actually, she was slightly afraid of this mysterious pavilion master. She had comprehended the Dao because of the pavilion master's spacetime technique, and that was why she broke through. Now that she had broken through, she felt that the Dao of spacetime was even more profound and unfathomable. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared by young Nianxue's side. Seeing Yi Xian, Dao Xuani, and the others were stunned. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura was different. Young Nianxue looked at Yi Xian, brother. At this moment, Dao Xuani suddenly said, Eternal immortality. Saying this, she frowned slightly, half-step supreme. Half-step supreme. Mu Xian and the others were dumbfounded when they heard this. This guy was already a half-step supreme? Yi Xian looked at Dao Xuani, let's go somewhere else. After saying this, he disappeared on the spot. Dao Xuani and Yi Xian also disappeared. Soon, the two of them arrived at an unknown and mysterious spacetime starfield. The starfield was deep and boundless, and the surroundings were dead silent. Dao Xuani looked at Yi Xian, and he was quite shocked. At this moment, Yi Xian did not understand that his body had recovered and reached its limit, the true immortality limit. Not only that, even his divine soul had reached its limit, but his will was slightly weaker. How did he do it? And in such a short time. At this moment, young Nianxue appeared by Yi Xian's side, and she said in a low voice, Brother, let me tell you some bad news, this woman has broken through. Broken through. Hearing this, Yi Xian turned to look at young Nianxue, You're not joking? Young Nianxue shook her head, No. She just broke through. She is now a superior supreme. Yi Xian was silent. Damn it. This woman actually broke through. But, so what? Isn't this good? This is more interesting. Yi Xian looked at Dao Xuani, opened his palm, and in an instant, a sword appeared in his hand. The profound green sword. It was not the real profound green sword, but the profound green sword that he condensed with his heart, but it looked exactly the same as the profound green sword. Dao Xuanyi looked at Yi Xian. Without that sword, you are no match for me. Yi Xian said fiercely, I want to try. Boom. As soon as he said this, Yi Xian's body began to burn. Burning the immortality limit body. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura suddenly skyrocketed. However, it was not over yet. After burning his body, Yi Xian's blood began to boil and burn. Burning his bloodline. Rumble. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed again, and the starfield within hundreds of thousands of miles began to boil. However, it was not over yet. After burning his bloodline, Yi Xian began to burn his soul. Boom. At this moment, the starfield within 1,000,000 miles began to burn, and then it began to be destroyed. Mu Xian and Lan Shan's faces became extremely solemn when they saw this. Damn it. This guy is too desperate. Burning his body, soul, and bloodline. He is playing with his life. Yang Nianxue, who was not far from Yi Xian, was also stunned. She did not expect that Yi Xian would do this as soon as he appeared, but on second thought, if Yi Xian did not do this, how could he be Dao Xuanyi's match? After all, before Dao Xuanyi broke through, Yi Xian was beaten up, let alone now that she had broken through. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared in it. Xiao Ta said solemnly, Young lord, let me fight alongside you. Yi Xian smiled, and then placed Xiao Ta in Yang Nianxue's hand. He looked at Yang Nianxue and said softly, Sister, if I die in battle, do you think Dad will be sad? Yang Nianxue's body trembled slightly. Definitely. Yi Xian turned to look at Dao Xuanyi in the distance and smiled, I have never hated him. Like father, like son. I will not embarrass him. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. Chi. A flaming sword light tore through the battlefield. At this moment, thousands of galaxies began to be annihilated. This was Yi Xian's most powerful sword move in history. He had really used all his strength in this sword move. This sword move forgot about life and death. He knew that when facing Dao Xuanyi who had broken through, he might only have one chance to attack. If he didn't succeed, then he would die. Seeing Yi Xian's terrifying sword move, Lan Shan and Mu Xian glanced at each other, and their eyes were filled with shock. This sword move was too terrifying. This sword move had surpassed a half-step supremacy stage. No, it was even more terrifying than a supremacy stage. Both of their hearts palpitated slightly because they weren't confident that they could withstand this terrifying sword move. This fellow had improved so much in such a short period of time. In the distance, Dao Xuanyi looked at the terrifying sword move with an expressionless face. Under everyone's gazes, Dao Xuanyi took a step forward, and her right hand slowly clenched tightly. In the next moment, she suddenly blasted a fist forward. Immeasurable. It was an ordinary punch, but it contained boundless energy. The instant this punch was blasted out, the star region within a radius of a few million kilometers was directly reduced to ashes. Doomsday. The expressions of Mu Xian, Lan Shan, and the others instantly changed drastically, and they retreated explosively. This punch and Yi Xian's sword move were two formidable forces that caused them to feel like death itself. If they didn't retreat, then they would really die. In the distance, Dao Xuanyi's punch smashed directly onto Yi Xian's sword. Bang! In an instant, two terrifying forces erupted in front of both of them like volcanoes. In an instant, countless strands of space were obliterated, and both of them retreated explosively at the same time. During this process, Yi Xian's body shattered inch by inch before it was obliterated, whereas, Dao Xuanyi's body trembled violently at this moment, and then it split apart while her soul started to burn. This retreat caused Yi Xian to retreat for over 100 kilometers, and when he stopped, his soul started to turn illusory at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. On the other hand, Dao Xuani only had her physical body left. She opened her palm, and then her right hand slowly clenched tightly. In an instant, boundless energy in the world converged towards her, and then her slightly illusory soul started to recover to normal. Moreover, her physical body actually started to be reconstructed bit by bit. Moreover, the aura around her was growing stronger and stronger. Both Mu Xian and Lan Shan were stunned when they witnessed this scene. What's going on? And it's even growing stronger? Meanwhile, Yu Xian spoke in a trembling voice from not too far away. This is what it means to be eternally. Eternally. The body had transformed into the universe, yet it had surpassed the universe. As long as the universe existed, the body, soul, and will would never be destroyed. The most terrifying part was that every time it was destroyed, one could be reborn, and reborn was rebirth. As long as the universe existed, one would exist forever. Chapter 2176. Immortality. This was true immortality. As long as the universe existed, one would not die. The reason why Yu Xian knew about the immortality realm was because the pavilion master had told him about it. However, he had never expected that Dao Xian had really reached the immortality realm. At this moment, Yu Xian could not contain his excitement. At this moment, he felt lucky that he had changed his mind and did not choose to protect Yu Xian. Otherwise, the celestial treasure pavilion would be gone at any moment. At this moment, he was even more certain that he had made the right decision. Moreover, his intuition told him that if the pavilion master appeared, he would definitely approve of his decision. Offending a super expert at the immortality realm for a person with a small background. How retarded was he? On the other side, Lan Shan and Mu Xian's expressions were extremely grave. At this moment, they knew the gap between them and Dao Xian. It was truly a gap between heaven and earth. Compared to Dao Xian, they were no longer comparable. As if they had thought of something, both of them looked at Yi Xian in the distance. At this moment, Yang Nianxue suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. In the next moment, she brought Yi Xian back to the 9th floor of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Seeing this scene, Mu Xian and Lan Shan's expressions became extremely ugly. They had been in a state of shock, so they had ignored Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue. This woman had saved Yi Xian again. At this moment, Dao Xianyi's body and soul had completely recovered. When she saw Yang Nianxue had saved Yi Xian again, her eyes instantly turned cold. At this moment, the surrounding temperature dropped sharply, and everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. After Yang Nianxue brought Yi Xian's weak soul to the 9th floor, she brought Yi Xian directly into the Shao Ta. In the Shao Ta, Yang Nianxue looked at the weak Yi Xian in front of her and said with a trembling voice, "Brother, hold on." At this moment, Yi Xian's soul was almost transparent, but it had not completely disappeared. Because his soul was immortal. However, immortality did not mean that it would not disappear. Moreover, his consciousness was gradually blurring. His body had reached the immortal realm, and his soul had also reached the immortal realm after devouring the green profound sword. However, his will hadn't reached the immortal realm yet. This was also the reason why Dao Xianyi said that he was a half-step to the Supreme Master stage. His willpower was slightly lacking. Seeing that Yi Xian was about to close his eyes, Yang Nianxue suddenly roared, "Are you going to admit defeat just like that? Are you going to admit defeat just like that?" Yi Xian did not respond. He slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, Yang Nianxue suddenly roared, "Are you willing to admit defeat just like that?" Yi Xian said softly, "Sister. I tried my best." Yang Nianxue glared at Yi Xian. "Is trying your best enough? Are you that weak? If you give up just like that, will your father look up to you? Do you think Tianming will look up to you? I will also look down on you. They will all look down on you." Yi Xian said weakly, "I want to rest." Yang Nianxue said angrily, "If you rest now, you will die. You will die. Do you understand?" Yi Xian's soul became weaker and his consciousness became more and more blurry. Yang Nianxue roared madly, "Brother, don't give up like that." Yi Xian's breath was so weak that it could barely be felt. Yang Nianxue was angry and panicked. "Get up, pretty boy, wake up. You." At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at Yang Nianxue and said with a trembling voice, "Big sister. What did you call me?" Yang Nianxue was stunned. Then she said, pretty boy." Yi Xian's throat rolled. Then he said with a trembling voice, "Help me up. I feel like I can still hold on for a while." Yang Nianxue slowly helped Yi Xian up. She looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian clenched his fists. His entire soul was trembling. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. However, his soul was trembling. "Give up." Yi Xian's facial features gradually became twisted and sinister. When was the most difficult time in his life? Of course it was when he was in Qing City. At that time, his mother had passed away. He and his sister only had each other to rely on. In that cruel family, it was even more difficult to survive than now. But at that time, he didn't give up. Why should he give up now? At this moment, he also understood one thing. Faith. At that time, the one who supported him was his sister. At that time, he never thought about dying. If he died, who would take care of his sister? She was still so young. He was her one and only. Not only could he not die, he had to live well. It was because of this faith that he never thought of giving up. And the reason why he wanted to give up was because he had no attachments. His father was invincible. His sister was invincible. Who should he worry about? There was indeed a lot of reluctance in his heart. However, he knew that even if he died, the people he couldn't bear to part with would be fine. If a person didn't have faith, then he wouldn't have the will to fight. At this moment, he wanted to live. Live well. For who? This time, he did it for himself, for Qing Er. Why did he have to become Qing Er's burden? Why? Can't I fight for Qing Er's honor? Was he really going to be a second-generation heir for the rest of his life? He still had so many people he cared about. Why should he die? Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes and bellowed, "No." As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his fists tightly. In an instant, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly soared from his soul into the sky. In an instant, the entire world within the small pagoda trembled violently, as if there was a great earthquake. It was extremely terrifying. Immortal will. At this moment, Yi Xian finally broke through the shackles of his will and became immortal. Now that his will was immortal, Yi Xian stood up and looked at Yang Nianxue. "Sister, I want to rebuild my body." At this moment, his eyes were filled with determination. Rebuild the immortal body. As long as his body recovered, he would reach the supremacy level because his will and soul had reached the limit of immortality. As long as his body recovered and reached the limit of immortality, he would surpass the immortality level and become a supremacy. Yang Nianxue nodded, "That's easy. I don't have much, but I have a lot of money." As soon as she finished speaking, she took out another storage ring. She hesitated for a moment before she said, "Little brother. This is the last of my possessions. Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue, "Call me sister once, always sister." Yang Nianxue curled her lips, then handed the storage ring to Yi Xian. "You can have it. Worst comes to worst, I'll get Little White to plunder more." Yi Xian took the storage ring, then said seriously, "Thank you." These words came from the bottom of his heart. If not for Yang Nianxue, he would really be dead. From the beginning until now, he couldn't even estimate the value of the things he used for cultivation. Cultivation was not something that could be achieved by just relying on talent. It also required money. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Yang Nianxue shook her head. "There's no need to talk about this between brother and sister." At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young masters, I want to remind you, you are not brother and sister. Yi Xian was stunned. Xiao Ta, what do you mean? Am I really not father's biological son? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, I mean, you are not brother and sister, you are King brother and sister. Brother and sister. She is the elder sister, you are the younger brother, not brother and sister, understand? Yi Xian, young Nianxue, in the following time, Yi Xian began to rebuild his body. Young Nianxue suddenly said, Brother, I have something that might be helpful to you. Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue. Yang Nianxue was silent for a moment, then she suddenly opened her palm. When she opened her palm cracked, and a stream of blood slowly flowed out. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Sister, you are, Yang Nianxue smiled slightly, I also have the crazed demon bloodline, and I have taken all kinds of treasures since I was young. You know, I have been with Xiao by an area, not only have I taken many treasures, I have also drunk Arya's blood. However, I really don't want to cultivate my body, so those treasures and Arya's blood are all wasted to me. Saying that, she looked at the blood in her right palm, and then said, My blood is better than any treasures. Moreover, I also have the crazed demon bloodline, although I haven't awakened it, but after it enters your body, you can make better use of it. Crazed demon bloodline. Although Yang Nianxue also had the crazed demon bloodline, she basically did not risk her life, nor did she go crazy, so the crazed demon bloodline had not awakened. Yi Xian hesitated, and then said, Sister, Yang Nianxue said softly, that woman is now above the supreme level, and your body has reached the supreme level, but it is far from enough. Your body must reach the same level as her, only then you can fight her. As for my blood, it will definitely be able to improve your physical body to the next level. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Yang Nianxue smiled and said, Do you know why I came out to train? Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue, and Yang Nianxue smiled slightly. Mother told me before, she said that I am luckier than you. I have been by her and father's side since I was young, and I have never suffered anything, but you are different, you have been left alone since you were young, and you have suffered all the hardships of the world. Saying that, she shook her head slightly. I am not convinced, I feel that I can also endure hardships. So, I ran out to train, but the cruelty of reality made me understand that many times, without the help of father and mother, I am afraid I would have died hundreds of times. Saying that, she took a deep breath, and her body relaxed, and then continued, I have thought it through now. I have suffered hardships, and I have experienced hardships. I feel that I have enough. So, I don't want to work hard anymore. I want to go back and inherit father and mother's family property. With their help, I feel that even if I can't become invincible in the universe, at least it will be easy for me to be able to have few opponents under 3 swords. Hearing that, Yi Xian, who was so touched that he almost shed tears, suddenly froze. Why does it feel a little strange? Where is my feeling? Why do I suddenly not feel touched? Yi Xian. Chapter 2177. Second Generation. Yi Xian sighed in his heart. This is a true second generation. Compared to Big Sis, I'm simply trash. Yang Nianxue suddenly said, What are you standing there for? Quickly absorb my blood. Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue, hesitated for a moment, and then said, Thank you, Big Sis. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and Yang Nianxue's blood floated into his palm. After that, Yi Xian started to absorb Yang Nianxue's blood. As soon as Yang Nianxue's blood entered his body, Yi Xian's blood started to boil like a drop of water falling into a frying pan. Yi Xian was stunned. What's going on? Suddenly, Yi Xian felt strands of terrifying energy suddenly spread out from within his body, and then his body started to absorb the energy madly. Yi Xian was overjoyed when he sensed this. It really is nourishing. Big Sis didn't lie to me. Her blood is even more nourishing than the tree of life. If I absorb all of Big Sis's blood, then I'll probably die on the spot. When he thought up to this point, Yi Xian couldn't help but feel a trace of shame. Big Sis is really good to me. How could I have such shameless thoughts? calm your mind. Yi Xian stopped letting his thoughts run wild, and he started to absorb Yang Nianxue's blood madly. Gradually, Yi Xian noticed that his body had undergone another qualitative change. It didn't take long for Yi Xian's body to reach the limit of the immortal realm. However, that wasn't the end. His body was still transforming. After reaching the limit of the immortal realm, his body was undergoing another transformation, and it meant that his body would reach another terrifying level. Outside the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Dao Xuanyi gazed silently at the 9th floor of the pavilion. Mu Xian, Lan Shan, and Yu Xian's expressions were extremely unsightly. They hid in there again. Those two bastards hid in there again. Can't they have some backbone and fight to the death? Lan Shan suddenly looked at Dao Xuanyi. Supreme Xuanyi, shall we fight our way in? Dao Xianyi shook his head. If you do that, you will be disrespectful to the pavilion master. Lan Shan said in a deep voice, they've barged in time and again. They're already disrespectful to the pavilion master. We don't have to care so much about it. Dao Xuanyi looked at Mist Mountain and said, then you go. Hearing this, Lan Shan's expression froze. Go by myself? Of course he wouldn't go. What a joke. That pavilion master's strength was so terrifying. If he offended her and she held a grudge against him, wouldn't he just die? Dao Xuanyi withdrew his gaze and said, he'll come out again. As soon as she finished speaking, a man slowly floated out from the window of the distant 9th floor. The moment Yi Xian appeared, Dao Xuanyi's eyes narrowed. Supreme. Supremacy. Hearing Dao Xian's words, Lan Shan and Mu Xian's minds went blank. Is he AF** King Supreme Martial Artist? Wasn't he just a half-step Supreme Being? The two of them stared fixedly at Yi Xian. When they saw that Yi Xian had really reached the Supreme Martial Artist realm, their faces turned as ugly as if they had eaten 10 caddies of dung. He really is a Supreme Martial Artist. How did this fellow cultivate? How long has it been? He directly advanced from a half-step Supreme Being to the Supreme Martial Artist realm? Motherfucker. Is the Supreme Martial Artist realm so easy to cultivate? Yi Xian gazed at Dao Xuanyi and said, again. As soon as he finished speaking, his body started to burn, and then his bloodline started to burn as well. After that, his soul started to burn as well. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura skyrocketed. It was countless times stronger than before. Mu Xian's expression was extremely unsightly when he witnessed this scene. Why does he burn his soul and body like it's a game? Lan Shan's expression was extremely gloomy. I want to know as well. Mu Xian stared fixedly at Chen Shi, whose aura was still skyrocketing. Why is he still able to survive after burning his soul and bloodline? Moreover, he's getting stronger and stronger. Isn't this cheating? Is there any justice in this world? Lan Shan remained silent. The tenacity of Yi Xian's vitality had greatly exceeded their expectations. He was like a freak. Dao Xuanyi looked at Yi Xian in the distance. At this moment, she was also slightly shocked. She had not expected that Yi Xian had actually reached the Supreme Martial Artist realm in such a short time. After all, she was also a genius. However, she had spent hundreds of years to advance from the eternal immortal realm to the Supreme Martial Artist realm. Moreover, she was considered to be early. Yet now, Yi Xian had reached the Supreme Martial Artist realm in such a short time. This was too abnormal. At this moment, Yi Xian's body, soul, and bloodline had undergone a qualitative change. Therefore, when he chose to burn his soul, bloodline, and body, his aura instantly swept across the heavens like a volcanic eruption. Although he was still a Supreme Martial Artist, his current aura had far surpassed that of a Supreme Martial Artist. Seeing this, Mu Xian and Lan Shan's expressions turned extremely unsightly. Previously, when Yi Xian was a half-step Supreme Martial Artist, his aura was already no weaker than theirs. Now, Yi Xian's aura had far surpassed theirs. This was too heaven-defying. This was too inhumane. This cultivation was like a game to him. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly took a step forward, and this step was accompanied by a swing of his sword. This time, he didn't just swing a single sword, he swung it 3 times. Slash it over. Slash the present. Slash the future. 3 swords into one. Moreover, the might of this attack was completely different from before. In the distance, Dao Xuani's eyes narrowed slightly, and a solemn expression appeared in the depths of her eyes for the first time. She closed her eyes slowly, and in an instant, the region of space around her had transformed into an enormous vortex. Meanwhile, Dao Xuani suddenly clenched her right fist and smashed it forward. As soon as she executed this punch, the space around her instantly became illusory, and then 3 rays of sword light faintly appeared within that illusory space. Dao Xuani's gaze was icy cold. Shatter. Bang. This punch caused the 3 rays of light to warp, and it wasn't just the present that was warped, the past and future were warped as well. However, the 3 rays of light didn't shatter. The formidable energy contained within the rays of light ceaselessly destroyed the force of Dao Xuani's punch. Moreover, the spatial vortex in the depths of Dao Xuani's body gradually started to become illusory. A wisp of a cold glow flashed in Dao Xuani's eyes, and then she suddenly spread open her right hand and roared furiously, "Boundless eternity." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly clenched her right hand. Hiss. 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 The spatial vortex where Dao Xuani resided suddenly split open, and then the 3 rays of light were torn apart at practically the exact same time, causing an extremely terrifying aura to instantly sweep towards the surroundings. The expressions of Mu Xian, Lan Shan, and the others instantly changed drastically, and they retreated madly. In an instant, the space in an area of a few millions of kilometers was directly obliterated by this terrifying force. At the same time, a terrifying fist tore through the surroundings and smashed forcefully towards Yi Xian. Merely the aura of such formidable force caused Mu Su and Lan Shan to feel terrified. An exalted being? At this moment, a trace of an absurd feeling actually arose in the depths of their hearts when they faced this force. We're ants. Ants. Both of them exchanged glances, and their eyes were filled with shock. Is this the power of an immortal? In the distance, Yi Xian watched as the fist assaulted him, and then he slowly closed his eyes. Calm down. Focus. In the next moment, Yi Xian suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot forward explosively. Hiss. A sharp tearing sound suddenly resounded through the heavens and the earth. Bang. Everyone watched as the ray of light slashed directly onto the fist. In the next moment, the fist was blasted into pieces. However, the ray of light was instantly obliterated as well. At the same time, Yi Xian retreated madly. A wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through Dao Xuani's eyes, and then she suddenly vanished on the spot. At the end of the starry sky, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head while a wisp of a ferocious expression flashed through his eyes. He didn't attack. Meanwhile, Dao Xuani's fist suddenly smashed against Yi Xian's chest, and at practically the exact same moment, Yi Xian's sword pierced through Dao Xuani's chest. Hiss. Bang. Yi Xian instantly retreated explosively. This retreat covered a distance of over 100 kilometers, and the space in his path was obliterated inch by inch. Dao Xuani gazed at the sword in front of Yi Xian. The sword had just entered her body when a powerful force suddenly erupted, and then it ceaselessly destroyed her internal organs. At the same time, her soul started to disperse swiftly. Dao Xuani slowly closed her eyes, and then she unfolded her right hand. In an instant, the entire world trembled violently, and then countless strands of mysterious energy surged into her. Her ethereal soul and body gradually started to recover at a visible speed. Moreover, her aura had become even stronger than before. Mu Xian and Lan Shan's expressions were extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. She was too heaven-defying. Eternal. She grew stronger as she fought. Unless they could kill her with a single strike, otherwise, she really wouldn't die. Moreover, she would grow stronger and stronger. Heaven-defying wasn't enough to describe it. Right at this moment, both of them seemed to have thought of something, and they suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's body had cracked apart completely. Especially his chest, it had sunken down, and it was an extremely shocking sight. However, his body hadn't shattered. His body had actually forcefully resisted Dao Xuani's terrifying punch. Mu Xian and Lan Shan exchanged glances, and a wisp of shock flashed through their eyes. Yi Xian's strength was extremely heaven-defying. He'd actually resisted Dao Xuani's terrifying punch. Mu Xian stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Who exactly is he? Lan Shan fell silent. At this moment, both of them were curious about Yi Xian's identity and background. Such a monstrous genius was absolutely not an ordinary person. He might have a formidable power backing him. Meanwhile, Lan Shan spoke abruptly, "Don't think too much about it. No matter how heaven-defying he is, he'll still be killed by Exalt Xian Yi." Mu Xian nodded lightly. Although Yi Xian was heaven-defying, he was still much weaker than Dao Xuani. Dao Xuani was at the immortal realm. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly spread his arms, and the next moment, he said softly, "Come. Come." As soon as his voice resounded, the surrounding starry sky trembled slightly. Mu Xian and Lan Shan frowned, and a trace of doubt arose in their hearts. What was coming? Right at this moment, both of their pupils suddenly constricted. They saw the starry sky suddenly seethe, and the next moment, countless mysterious forces surged towards Yi Xian like a tidal wave. The power of the myriad worlds in the heavens. The power of the myriad worlds in the heavens. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura suddenly skyrocketed again, and his aura was actually approaching Dao Xuani. In the distance, Dao Xuani looked at Yi Xian. "It's time to end this." Yi Xian laughed loudly. "It's time to end this. Come." As soon as his voice resounded, both of them vanished on the spot. Chapter 2178. Hiss. Bang. The starry sky suddenly started burning. Both of them had utilized their full strength this time. Dao Xian stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who was getting closer and closer, and then she suddenly clenched her right fist and swung it forward. Boundless Nirvana. Bang. With this punch, a terrifying fist light suddenly erupted from her fist. As this fist light appeared, the entire medium world started to tremble. The might of this punch was sufficient to destroy the entire middle world. However, Dao Xian's punch hadn't targeted the middle world. She'd converged her strength onto a single point and targeted Yi Xian. A wisp of a ferocious smile arose on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth when facing this terrifying punch, and then he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Draw the sword to decide life and death. It was a sword technique that he hadn't utilized for a very long time. At this instant, Yi Xian overlapped madly. One after another dreadful energy erupted in front of Yi Xian like a volcanic eruption. When that punch collided head-on with Yi Xian's countless overlapped rays of sword light. Bang! Suddenly, an explosion resounded throughout the middle world. Countless people were horrified, and they raised their heads to look towards this area while their eyes were filled with astonishment. On the other hand, Mu Xian and Lan Shan had started retreating madly since a long time ago, and they'd moved far away from Yi Xian and Dao Xian. As that terrifying force erupted, Yi Xian and Dao Xian were suddenly blasted flying. At the instant that Yi Xian's figure was blasted flying, his body had started to be obliterated bit by bit. However, the speed at which his body was being obliterated wasn't so fast this time. So, his body was repairing itself at the same time that it was being obliterated. This time, the speed at which he repaired himself was faster than the speed at which his body was obliterated. So, Yi Xian's body was preserved. However, his countenance was pale as a sheet of paper, and his entire body was covered in blood. The strength of this punch had heavily injured him. Dao Xian had stopped moving as well, and her body had started to be obliterated while her soul was swiftly dissipating as well. However, just like Yi Xian, this universe was constantly repairing her body and soul. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly raised her head and looked at Dao Xianyi. Her lips curled into a ferocious smile, and in the next moment, she disappeared on the spot. Chi! A ray of sword light tore through the battlefield. In the distance, Dao Xuanyi raised his head and looked at the approaching sword light, his face expressionless. When the sword light arrived in front of her, she suddenly put her palms together, and an invisible barrier appeared in front of her. Boom! Yi Xian's sword struck the barrier, causing it to tremble slightly before cracking open. However, it didn't shatter. In the distance, Yi Xian was just about to attack again. Right at this moment, Dao Xuanyi suddenly vanished on the spot. Yi Xian swiftly raised his head, and at this moment, an afterimage had arrived in front of him. Yi Xian was expressionless. With a thought, countless flying swords suddenly appeared around him. The two of them once again chose to fight head-on. Boom! Countless rays of sword light were destroyed, and Dao Xuanyi suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's throat. Right when she was about to exert force, a sword was suddenly pressed against her throat. The two of them who were very close to each other exchanged a glance, and in the next moment, Dao Xuanyi suddenly exerted force. Crack! Yi Xian's throat directly shattered, and her soul was forced out of her body by Dao Xuanyi. At practically the exact same moment, Yi Xian's sword stabbed into Dao Xuanyi's throat, and then she suddenly slashed it. Chi! Dao Xuanyi's throat was directly torn apart. At this moment, she had no choice but to abandon her body and escape with her soul. At this moment, both of them were in soul form. After they became souls, Yi Xian vanished on the spot once more. Dao Xuanyi suddenly raised her head, and in the next moment, her soul directly transformed into numerous afterimages that shot out explosively. Bang! Another explosion resounded in the heavens and the earth, and then both souls retreated explosively at the same time. While Yi Xian was retreating, with a thought, numerous flying swords suddenly slashed towards the distant Dao Xuanyi. In an instant, sword energy crisscrossed the heavens and the earth, and sword light filled the air. In the distance, the corners of Dao Xuanyi's mouth curled up slightly, and a ferocious expression appeared on her face. She suddenly stretched out her right hand, and then suddenly clenched it. In an instant, the space before her suddenly transformed into a huge black vortex. When Yi Xian's sword light entered this vortex, all of them were distorted, and then they were shattered and obliterated. In the next moment, she suddenly charged forward and suddenly smashed her elbow towards Yi Xian. This smash caused the entire heavens and earth to directly split apart like a spider web, and it was extremely terrifying. In the face of this terrifying elbow, Yi Xian suddenly grinned ferociously. In the next moment, he transformed into a sword and suddenly slashed forward. He fought head-on. At this moment, it was time to see who could survive. Bang! An expanse of sword light suddenly shattered, and then Yi Xian was directly blasted back. Meanwhile, Dao Xuanyi suddenly pressed forward and smashed his fist towards Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly and mysteriously vanished on the spot, and when he appeared again, he was already over 30 kilometers away. After he stopped, he opened his palm, and a sword suddenly condensed within it. He slowly closed his eyes, and the sword in his hand trembled violently. In the next moment, he suddenly opened his left hand. Sword. As soon as he spoke, the starry sky trembled, and then countless swords suddenly shot through space to arrive above Yi Xian. There were over 1,000,000 swords. At this moment, numerous terrifying sword auras enveloped the entire medium world. In the starry sky, Mu Xian and Lan Shan's expressions had become solemn. At this moment, they suddenly realized that they seemed to have slightly underestimated Yi Xian. This idiot's attainments in the sword Dao are really not bad. In the starry sky, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and swept them across the sword in his hand. In the next moment, his eyes directly turned blood red, and in an instant, his soul started burning once more. At the same time, his blood started burning as well. Bang! Bang! The moment his blood started burning, the sword in his hand directly turned blood red. Not only that, but the million swords behind him also turned blood red. Below, Mu Xian glared at Yi Xian and said angrily, "Damn it. Why does he burn his soul like it's a game? He burns it when he wants it to, and stops it when he wants it to." Lan Shan stared at Yi Xian, his expression quite unsightly. How many times had Yi Xian burned his soul? He couldn't remember. In any case, this fella burned his soul, body, and blood whenever he fought. Most importantly, this fella still didn't die. This was really F***king ridiculous. In fact, the reason why Yi Xian could do this was because of the profound green sword. After he swallowed the profound green sword, his soul directly reached the limit of Immortal Realm, and not just any ordinary limit of Immortal Realm. Because although the sword was gone, the profound green sword's special characteristics were still there, such as its special characteristic of suppressing the soul. Because of this special characteristic, Yi Xian could burn his soul crazily without completely vanishing. It was the profound green sword that gave him the ability to burn his soul and not die. Opposite Yi Xian, Dao Xian was expressionless. She opened her palm, and the infinite God ruler appeared in her hand. At this moment, she no longer looked down on Yi Xian. Nor did she dare to look down on him. Up until now, Yi Xian was getting stronger every second. Although her realm was one level higher than Yi Xian's combat strength was no weaker than hers, although she also felt that it was ridiculous. At this moment, a huge white dragon suddenly appeared on the battlefield. It was the spiritual dragon, the leader of the 36 spiritual veins. The spiritual dragon looked at Yi Xian and Dao Xian in the distance, its face extremely gloomy. "Are you trying to destroy this medium world?" Yi Xian turned to look at the spiritual dragon, his eyes like a sea of blood. "Scram." The spiritual dragon glared at Yi Xian, then scram. After saying that, it turned around and turned into a white light, disappearing into the horizon. Everyone, Yi Xian's face froze. Damn it. What's going on? Mu Xian spoke solemnly, "The spiritual dragon is afraid." Mist Mountain fell silent. Afraid? Actually, they were afraid as well. If they had to face Yi Xian alone, then they wouldn't hesitate to turn around and flee as well. The current Yi Xian wasn't someone they could resist. Yi Xian gazed at Dao Xian, and then he didn't waste his breath at all. He just vanished abruptly. Hiss. A ray of blood-red light tore through the battlefield. At the same time, the million swords behind him suddenly tore through the starry sky and slashed towards Dao Xian. At this moment, all the experts in the medium world were horrified. Because Yi Xian's attack had severely threatened the medium world. Dao Xian slowly closed her eyes. She held the ruler vertically between her brows with her right hand, and then she placed the fingers of her left hand on top of the ruler before sliding it down slowly. In the next moment, she suddenly opened her eyes, and then she suddenly swept the infinite God ruler, infinite. An extremely terrifying force suddenly swept out with this swing of the ruler. What was infinite? It was limitless and without end. The infinite God ruler had been created by the ancestor of the solitary mystery path, and it contained boundless energy. The two of them collided head-on once more. Bang! In an instant, countless rays of light were obliterated, and the space around Dao Xian was being destroyed madly. As for Yi Xian himself, he was instantly blasted flying. But a moment later, he forcefully charged towards Dao Xian once more. In the distance, Dao Xian had been completely disregarding the countless rays of light that were tearing through her surroundings. She suddenly stomped her right foot on the ground and vanished on the spot, and then she swept the ruler towards Yi Xian's head. Neither of them retreated. It was a method of mutual destruction. Right at this moment, a Xiao Ta suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian's head, and it forcefully resisted Dao Xian's attack. At practically the exact same moment, Yi Xian's right hand transformed into a sword that stabbed into Dao Xian's soul. Bang! Bang! The Xiao Ta howled miserably, and then it was swept flying for over 100 kilometers. However, it still didn't shatter into pieces because it was supported by Arya's horn. Yi Xian stared fixedly at Dao Xian, and he spoke fiercely, "Woman, it's over." As he spoke, he suddenly exerted force with his right hand and was about to completely shatter Dao Xian's soul. But right at this moment, an extremely terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the infinite God ruler in Dao Xian's hand. Bang! Yi Xian, who was very close to it, was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away. And when he stopped, his soul started to become transparent. Everyone gazed at the infinite God ruler, and then a soul slowly floated out from within it. It was a middle-aged man. All of them were stunned. Who is he? The middle-aged man gazed at the slightly weakened Dao Xian and grinned, "Very good. I never expected that a peerless genius like you would actually appear in my solitary mystery path after a few tens of thousands of years." Ha ha ha. Mu Xian suddenly exclaimed, "He's the ancestor of the solitary mystery path, Ji Xian. What the fuck? Could he be an expert above the eternal realm? The eternal realm?" As soon as these words were spoken, Lan Shan and the others were petrified on the spot. Dao Xian gazed at Ji Xian and spoke softly, "Ancestral master." Ji Xian smiled, "Recuperate first." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and gazed at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, young Nianxue had appeared by Yi Xian's side. She held Yi Xian's weak soul in her arms and spoke in a trembling voice, "Little brother." Yi Xian's soul was so weak that it was almost translucent. He grabbed young Nianshue's hand and spoke softly, "Big sister, I really can't hold on any longer." Young Nianshue held Yi Xian tightly and spoke in a trembling voice, "Enough. Enough. You've done enough." Yi Xian grinned, but his smile was pale. He turned around and looked towards the depths of the starry sky, and the image of a plain dress appeared in the depths of his mind. Qing. It would be regretful to die just like that. However, life and death were not up to anyone. Yi Xian's eyes slowly closed, and the hand that was holding young Nianshue's hand also softened at this moment. "Big sister, tell Dad that I'm sorry. I've disappointed him." As soon as he finished speaking, his breath was as thin as silk, almost non-existent. At this moment, the space-time not far from Yi Xian suddenly split open, and a woman slowly walked out. The woman was wearing a plain dress. The main body. The woman in the plain dress slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. She bent over and took Yi Xian from young Lianshuang's arms. She gently caressed Yi Xian's cheek, and her eyes were filled with tenderness, but gradually, this tenderness turned into coldness. "Clear the area." As soon as she finished speaking, a sword suddenly descended from the starry sky of Middle World. In an instant, the entire Middle World started to burn. Walking Dao sword. Enforcing justice on behalf of heaven? That was in the past. And now? It was enforcing justice on behalf of its brother. Chapter 11, Breaking My Personal Record. Thank you. 592785520 readers have given me 330 monthly votes this month. Brothers who have never spoken to me, and brothers who have come to support me, vast blue starry sky, who have given me 264 monthly votes, and a low-profile brother, Fa Xiaoxian, who has given me 222 monthly votes. There are also many readers who have given me gifts. Please forgive me for not being able to list them all, because there are too many. If I were to list them all, I could write a chapter directly. I have seen every single one of your votes and gifts. Really, I am very touched, because you could have read it for free, and you could have not spent any money, but you still support me. There is nothing I can do to repay you, so I can only write good books, and repay you with more chapters. Thank you to all the readers who have quietly voted and gifted. I know that there are many of them who have voted and gifted me, but they do not say anything. I am really grateful for everyone's support. Finally, those who have money, support me, and those who have no money, support me. Students don't want gifts, and those who are second generation like Yi Xian, please ignore this. Also, yesterday, a brother in the group said that I will not break out more than 5 chapters today, or else, he will do a handstand and have diarrhea. Brother, do you mean what you say? Chapter 2179. As the path sword descended slowly, the entire middle world started to boil. In the next moment, the entire middle world started to burn and gradually became illusory. Everyone was horrified. It was going to annihilate the entire middle world. The expressions of Mu Xian and the others changed drastically at the sight of this, and their eyes were filled with terror. How strong was the aura of this sword? Despair. At this moment, they were in despair. They couldn't even muster the thought of resisting this sword. At this moment, they felt like ants in front of this sword. No, they were even inferior to ants. Ji Xian stared at the woman in the plain dress, and his eyes were solemn for the first time. Your Excellency, a strand of sword light suddenly pierced his throat, and his voice stopped abruptly. Ji Xian's pupils constricted, and his mind went blank as if he'd been struck by lightning. How is this possible? That was the only thought in his mind. He was actually killed in an instant. Although he was just a wisp of clone, he was boundless realm. Even if it was a wisp of clone, in this sort of place, that was a godlike existence too. How could he be killed in an instant? At this moment, his mind was in a daze. Just at this moment, the spiritual dragon that had rolled away appeared once more. She looked at Tianming, who was holding Yi Xian in his arms, and said with a trembling voice, "Boss. If your sword descends, this middle world will be gone." Tianming glanced at the spiritual dragon with a calm expression. The spiritual dragon's soul trembled from this gaze, and she hurriedly said, "I understand. I understand. I'll scram right away." "Boss, do as you please." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished into the horizon. Damn it. I don't care about the middle world anymore. Staying alive is the way of the king. Tianming looked at Yi Xian, who was in his arms. At this moment, Yi Xian's soul had actually recovered completely. Not only that, but his body had recovered as well. Yang Nianxue was dumbfounded. What's going on? Yi Xian opened his eyes. When he saw Tianming, he was slightly stunned, and then he smiled bitterly. I'm the king of reliance again. Qing'er gently caressed Yi Xian's cheek and softly said, "I don't mind." Yi Xian was speechless. At this time, Yang Nianxue lightly touched Yi Xian's hand and then gestured to the starry sky. Yi Xian looked up at the starry sky. At this moment, the starry sky was already burning. Qing'er wants to destroy the entire middle universe. Yi Xian grabbed Qing'er's hand and said softly, "Forget it. My skills are inferior to others, and I can't beat them. I deserve to be beaten. Don't implicate the other creatures in this universe." Tianming nodded. Whatever Big Brother says. As soon as she finished speaking, the path sword trembled slightly, and then it transformed into a ray of light that descended by her side. With the disappearance of the path sword, all the experts and living beings in the middle world felt relieved. Just a little bit more and this middle world would have been finished. Yang Nianxue looked at Tianming with a strange expression. Actually, she had basically never seen Tianming before. She had only heard of the legends of Tianming. This was an existence that had hung her father up and beaten up. Wasn't she said to be very cold? At this moment, she felt that Tianming was quite easy to talk to. Tianming suddenly looked at Ji Xian in the distance. The latter stared at her and said mockingly, "Trying to bully me because my true body isn't here?" True body. Alive. Hearing this, Mu Xian and Lan Shan instantly felt hope reignite. This Ji Xian is actually still alive. A super expert above the immortal realm. At this time, the path sword beside Tianming suddenly disappeared into Ji Xian's forehead. Ji Xian laughed loudly. "What ability do you have to attack this clone of mine? If you have the ability, wait for my true body to descend." As he said this, he seemed to sense something and his pupils suddenly shrank. In the distant endless starry sky, in a certain city, a sword suddenly fell. As this sword fell, the entire floating city became illusory. Within the city, countless powerhouses suddenly looked up, their eyes filled with terror. Who was attacking? Was this going to destroy the seamless city? At this time, an angry roar suddenly resounded from the distant starry sky. How dare you? Who dares to distort spacetime and destroy the seamless city? Do you not want to live? F***CK. Master Tianming, it's you again. Master of Time greets Master Tianming. I kowtow to you. As he spoke, the sound of kowtowing suddenly resounded from the depths of the starry sky. His voice could only be heard by Tianming, but Tianming ignored him. That sword continued to fall straight down. At this time, an angry roar suddenly resounded from the city. Puny swordsman, how laughable. You actually want to use your true body and clone to kill me. How absurd, how laughable. As the voice fell, a middle-aged man charged into the sky. The middle-aged man directly punched the path sword. This middle-aged man was Ji Xian's true body. The moment Ji Xian punched, the path sword directly disappeared into his forehead. There were no fancy tricks. It was an instant kill. It was that simple and direct. An unreasonable instant kill. In the sky, Ji Xian was stunned. He was instantly killed. His true body was actually instantly killed? How was that possible? Was he dreaming? Soon, Ji Xian realized that he was not dreaming because he was disappearing bit by bit, the kind that was about to be erased. At this moment, Ji Xian was shocked and he hurriedly roared, "Woman, do you know who my master is? My master is the left protector of the Time Court, the right-hand man of the Time Master. Do you know who the Time Master is? F***CK. At this moment, a shocked voice suddenly resounded in the starry sky. It was the Time Master. The Time Master suddenly appeared in front of Ji Xian. When Ji Xian saw the Time Master, he was first stunned and then overjoyed. He was about to speak, but the Time Master's legs weakened and he directly knelt down. He said with a trembling voice, "Master Tianming. I swear by the Tao of Time, I don't know this person. My Time Court has nothing to do with this person." At this moment, the Time Master actually cried. He really cried. Scared. He was really shocked to the extreme. Those who had not fought with Tianming would not know how terrifying she was. Once upon a time, he also thought that he was invincible in the world, until one day, he met Tianming. On that day, he was defeated. One sword. He, the great Time Master, could not even take one sword from her. If he had not knelt down quickly, he, the Time Master, would no longer exist in this world. If there really was a god in this world, then Tianming was even more terrifying than a god. At this moment, he did not expect that his people from the Time Court would actually offend Tianming, and the other party even mentioned him. Oh my god. This was a trap for him. Seeing the Time Master actually kneeling there, Ji Xian's mind went blank. In their hearts, the Time Master was a godlike existence. And now, this godlike existence was actually kneeling there, trembling. Oh my god. Who was that woman? At this moment, Ji Xian's face was ashen. At this moment, the walking sword in Ji Xian's body slowly floated out and then pointed at the Time Master. The Time Master was shocked and hurriedly kowtowed, "Master Tianming, I and young Master Yi are sworn brothers. I and young Master Yi are sworn brothers. Young Master Yi." The walking sword trembled slightly, and in the next moment, it vanished. Seeing this, the Time Master's body went limp, and he almost collapsed. He felt extremely fortunate. Young Master Yi. Master Tianming really gave young Master Yi face. Fortunately, he had formed a good karma with young Master Yi, otherwise, he would be finished. As if thinking of something, the Time Master suddenly turned to look at Ji Xian, who was about to vanish completely, and roared furiously, "F***CK your ancestors." As he spoke, he slapped out with his palm. Bang! Ji Xian was directly wiped out. Ji Xian. In the middle world. In front of Tianming, Ji Xian's clone gradually vanished, and he looked at Tianming with eyes filled with confusion. Who the hell are you? He did not know what had happened to his main body, but he knew that his main body was gone. His clone was like a duckweed without roots. Even if Tianming did not act, he would vanish completely. Tianming did not answer Ji Xian. She turned to look at Mu Xian and Lan Shan, and their expressions changed drastically. Lan Shan stared at Tianming. Fight her to the death. Mu Xian nodded. All right. Lan Shan's expression was ferocious. Woman, I don't believe you're really that strong. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged towards Tianming. And he chose to ignite his soul and body as well. If Yi Xian could ignite his soul, so could he. They were all human, so why should he be afraid? Needless to say, Lan Shan did have some ability. After he ignited his soul and body, his aura had reached an extremely terrifying level. Although it was not as strong as Yi Xian and Dao Xian, it was still extremely terrifying. In the distance, Tianming looked at Mu Xian with a calm expression. When Lan Shan was only a few dozen meters away from Tianming, a sword suddenly pierced through his forehead. Bang! Lan Shan's body shook violently, and then it became illusory. Instant kill. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. Moreover, he did not even see Tianming attack. Lan Shan looked at Tianming in the distance, and he was slightly at a loss. Am I that weak? It was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Am I that weak? That's a supreme exalt. In the shadows, the face of the branch president of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, Yu Xian, was extremely pale. At this moment, he realized why the pavilion master had given the Dark Heaven token to Yi Xian. It was because he was too narrow-minded. Meanwhile, Lan Shan suddenly turned to look at Mu Xian. Why didn't you attack? Mu Xian spoke with a trembling voice. Is there any point? Lan Shan laughed miserably. No. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished completely. He was directly wiped out. Mu Xian gazed at Tianming, and he hesitated for a moment before he said, Can I spare your life if I surrender? As soon as he finished speaking, a sword suddenly pierced through the space between his brows and was wiped out. Everyone was speechless. In the depths of the starry sky, the spirit dragon trembled with fear. Fortunately, if *ket off quickly. The world laughs at me for being a coward, and I laugh at their stupidity. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished into the boundless starry sky. In the end, Tianming turned to look at Dao Xian. Dao Xian stared at Tianming with a calm expression, and there wasn't a trace of fear in his eyes. Tianming gazed at Dao Xian. Is it someone you called? Dao Xian replied with a question. Who are you? Hiss. A sword suddenly pierced through the space between Dao Xian's brows, and then his body stiffened while his soul instantly became illusory. Tianming gazed at Dao Xian. I asked you to answer, not ask. P.S. Wait a moment, I'll be right there. Chapter 2180. Stars flickered in Yang Nianshue's eyes when she heard Tianming. How domineering. That's how women should be. I'll stab my sword through the head of anyone I don't like. Haha. Yang Nianshue started to daydream, and she couldn't help but start laughing as she thought about it. Dao Xuani stared at Tianming from afar. You're very strong, but I'm not afraid of you. She wasn't even afraid of death, so she naturally wasn't afraid of anyone. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Qing, didn't call for help just now. Ji Xian came out on his own. Tianming turned to look at Yi Xian. Do you need me to deal with her for you? Yi Xian smiled. There's no need. Because I defeated her just now. If Ji Xian hadn't appeared at the last moment, then he would have killed Dao Xuani. Tianming nodded slightly. She flicked her sleeve, and the walking sword returned to her hand. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Qing, little soul. Tianming suddenly opened her palm. In an instant, the entire world became illusory, and then a sword appeared in her hand. The green profound sword. Tianming suddenly said, "Soul, come." As soon as she finished speaking, the green profound sword trembled slightly. In the next moment, little soul's soul was condensed once more. It wasn't creating a new soul, it was soul return. Dao Xuani's eyes were filled with disbelief when he witnessed this scene. Resurrection? Dao Xuani couldn't help but ask, "How did you do that?" Qing suddenly waved her right hand. Slap. Dao Xuani's soul was slapped flying into the starry sky. Yang Nianshua's expression froze when she witnessed this scene. Tianming's temper really isn't very good. The green profound sword in her hand trembled slightly. Tianming gazed at the sword. She pressed her fingers together to hold the sword lightly, and then she swung it down. As soon as she swung it down, two large words appeared on the sword: invincible. Invincible? Yi Xian was stunned. Tianming placed the green profound sword in front of Yi Xian. "I have given her a new life. From today onwards, no matter what level you are at, as long as you activate this sword, she will be able to forcefully raise your cultivation by 2 realms without any side effects. That's not all. From now on, this sword contains the power of time. So long as you draw on the power of time, you can destroy all techniques and Daos in the world. Not only that, from now on, no technique can harm this sword, no Daos can suppress it, and no time can destroy it." Yi Xian was dumbfounded. The Qingxian sword was going to be invincible? At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly floated in front of Tianming. "Xiao Ta, am willing to go through water and tread on fire for young master. If I don't die, the young master won't die. If you want the young master to die, you must first kill me, Xiao Ta. For the young master, I dare to do anything." Yi Xian was speechless. Yang Nianxua glanced at Xiao Ta. "Xiao Ta, you'll be beaten to death." "Xiao Ta," Tianming looked at Xiao Ta, not saying a word. Xiao Ta hesitated, then said, "Sister Tianming. I don't want to be just a pagoda anymore." Tianming's expression was calm. "Then what do you want to do?" Xiao Ta immediately said, "I want to be an invincible pagoda." Yi Xian was speechless. "Damn, isn't it still a pagoda? I thought you wanted to be a human." Tianming opened her palm, and Xiao Ta fell into her hand. She put her fingers together and lightly touched Xiao Ta's pagoda. Xiao Ta trembled slightly, and in the next moment, his pagoda body actually started to change. Originally, his pagoda body was golden, but now, it was gradually turning dark purple. Tianming looked at Xiao Ta. "I used sword qi to shape your body, but you're too weak to withstand the power of my sword qi. So, I controlled the power of the sword qi, and used less than 1/1,000,000th of it." Hearing this, Yang Nianxua, who was at the side, was dumbfounded. Her mouth was so wide that an egg could fit inside. Yi Xian was also a little confused. 1/1,000,000th of it? His mind was blank. Xiao Ta suddenly asked, "Sister Tianming, how much is 1/1,000,000th of it?" Tianming was silent. Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment, then said, "Sister Tianming, how big is the gap between me and you? Tell me honestly, I, Xiao Ta, can withstand any blow." Tianming glanced at Xiao Ta. "A little bit. A little bit." Xiao Ta instantly became excited. "Sister Tianming, you're not lying to me?" Tianming nodded. Xiao Ta suddenly laughed out loud. "Sister Tianming, I will work hard. One day, I, Xiao Ta, will surpass you." Tianming, Yang Nianxua sighed softly. Xiao Ta's brain is screwed. Yang Nianxua seemed to have thought of something, and she hurriedly walked over to Yi Xian's side. She pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve lightly, and then she said softly, "Little brother, you promised big sister a sword." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Can you forge a sword for big sister?" If it was anyone else, then he would definitely refuse. But big sister was different. If Big Sister hadn't risked her life to protect him, then he would have been dead by now. Qing glanced at Yang Nianxue, and then she pondered deeply for a moment before she said, "What do you want?" Yang Nianxue hurriedly said, "Anything. Anything you want." Tianming nodded slightly, and then she opened her palm. In an instant, the entire world trembled, and then countless snowflakes surged over from all directions. As the snowflakes entered the world, the temperature of the entire world instantly plummeted. Meanwhile, Tianming opened her palm, and a strand of sword energy appeared in front of her. The snowflakes surged into the sword energy, and it didn't take long for a sword of ice and snow to condense into a sword of ice and snow. Tianming gazed at Yang Nianxue. "Use snow as the body of the sword, and my sword energy as the soul." As she spoke, she placed the sword before Yang Nianxue. Yang Nianxue hurriedly took the sword, and then her eyes lit up. The sword felt cold in her hand, but it wasn't cold. She didn't know if it was strong, but it was beautiful. Moreover, it was snow. Her name was Yang Nianxue. She really liked this sword. As if she'd thought of something, Yang Nianxue suddenly asked, "Big brother Tianming, how much strength did you use in that sword energy?" Tianming gazed at Yang Nianxue. "Are you sure you want to know?" Yang Nianxue immediately shook her head. "I understand. I understand." Saying that, she smiled bitterly. "Big brother Tianming, is there anything in this world that can withstand the power of your complete sword energy?" Tianming nodded. "There is." Yang Nianxue was a little curious. "What is it?" Tianming looked at Yang Nianxue. "That arrogant little girl's body." Arrogant little girl. Yang Nianxue was stunned at first, and then her expression changed drastically. F***ck. Area. Area. Hearing Tianming's words, Yi Xian also felt a little embarrassed. Area. If he used Aria's body as the body of the sword, and then used Qing, or sword energy as the soul, thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly felt a little ashamed. Aria was a very loyal friend. "I can't think like this." Yang Nianxue glanced at Tianming, and began to worry for Aria. Aria was good at everything, but she didn't like to admit defeat. She was stubborn, and even if she couldn't beat her opponent, she would fight first and then talk later. At this time, Tianming looked at Yi Xian. "I'm leaving." Yi Xian was stunned, and then hurriedly asked, "Where to?" Tianming said, "The Milky Way." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Qing, can you tell me what you're doing in the Milky Way?" Tianming was silent. Yi Xian said softly, "Can't you say?" Tianming shook his head. "Of course I can. I'm going to the Milky Way to suppress someone." Yi Xian slightly frowned. "Someone? Suppress?" Tianming nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Can you kill that person?" Tianming looked at Yi Xian. "It's a little complicated." Complicated. Yi Xian was silent. Qing also felt complicated, and it seemed this matter wasn't simple. Tianming said softly, "You've changed a lot." In fact, she was a little surprised. She thought Yi Xian would ask her for advice, but Yi Xian didn't. "I've finally matured." Yi Xian smiled. After the previous battle, not only did his strength increase greatly, but his state of mind also underwent earth-shattering changes. If one didn't force themselves, they would never know how good they were. Qing suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian and said softly, "Good luck." After saying that, she hugged Yi Xian and turned to leave. At this time, Yang Nianxue suddenly said, "Boss Tianming, can I ask you something?" Qing looked at Yang Nianxue, not saying a word. Yang Nianxue was a little embarrassed. Yi Xian smiled. "Ask away." Yang Nianxue hurriedly returned to Xiao Ta's room and took out the ancient book written by the mysterious pavilion master. She flipped to the first page and said, "Boss Tianming, what do you think of the pavilion master's theory of the universe?" Qing glanced at the book in silence. Yang Nianxue wanted to ask something else, but Qing suddenly said, "This person's knowledge far surpasses Miss Nian's." Surpasses Miss Nian's. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically when he had heard that. He had to admit that he was shocked. Sister Nian. After all, how terrifying was Sister Nian's wisdom and knowledge. She was practically second only to the three swords. But this mysterious pavilion master's knowledge actually surpasses Sister Nian's? Is he really that heaven-defying? Qing suddenly withdrew her gaze and looked at Yi Xian. I'm leaving. Then she hugged Yi Xian gently. Then she turned around. She disappeared as soon as she turned around. Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue fell silent. Is this mysterious pavilion master really that terrifying? A trace of worry flashed through Yi Xian's eyes as if he'd thought of something. Qing is suppressing something. All of a sudden, he began to worry. The stronger it is, the more he feels that the universe isn't simple. It really is endless. Are Qing, Dad, and Big Brother really the ceiling of the boundless universe? Yi Xian fell silent. Meanwhile, Yang Nianxue suddenly said, Brother, I'm leaving as well. Yi Xian looked at Yang Nianxue. You're leaving as well? Yang Nianxue nodded. I've been out for a long time. Mother must be worried. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Are you going back to inherit the family property? Yang Nianxue laughed heartily. Yes. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Sister, can you give me some when the time comes? How lowly. Yang Nianxue smiled mischievously. Of course. Of course. As soon as she finished speaking, she hugged Yi Xian lightly. Brother, good luck. I look forward to the day you crush Dad. If you have any difficulties, you can look for me. I can't fight, but I have a lot of money. I'll use my money to smash them to death. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished into the horizon. Yi Xian fell silent, and he suddenly felt a sense of reluctance. Suddenly, the sky in the distance split apart, and then a beautiful woman walked out from within it. She glanced at the surroundings and said, Where's the president of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's branch, Yu Xian? Yu Xian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, I am. May I know who you are? The woman glanced at Yu Xian, and then she withdrew a command token. According to the orders of the pavilion master, you're no longer the president of this branch. Your actions will be judged by the elders. Yu Xian's face was ashen. I'm finished. He knows that his future is gone. The woman turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then she bowed slightly. Respected young Master Yi, this matter was caused by my Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Yi Xian suddenly withdrew the Black Heaven token, and then he tossed it aside like trash. Tui. He tossed the token aside, and then he turned around and left. The woman was speechless. Thank you to all the friends who tipped me yesterday. There were too many to list. Thank you very much. It'll erupt again on the 15th of this month, and it might even be earlier. Watch my writing speed. Thank you to all the readers for your support. Seeking monthly votes. Chapter 2181. The pretty woman sighed as she looked at the Black Heaven token that Yi Xian had tossed aside. Yu Xian's actions were a devastating blow to the Immortal Treasure Pavilion's reputation. The Black Heaven token. This was equivalent to someone recognized by the pavilion master, but Yu Xian had acted smart and violated the rules set by the pavilion master. The pretty woman turned to look at the pale Yu Xian. There's a very, very high chance that you'll be sentenced to death. Even if you're not sentenced to death, you'll be imprisoned in the seamless world forever. Yu Xian, the pretty woman looked at the black-robed middle-aged man. Ah Wu, the pavilion master allowed you and Yu Xian to run the Immortal Treasure Pavilion together. Yu Xian didn't respect the pavilion master, so why don't you do the same? Ah Wu bowed slightly. Esteemed ambassador, Wu knows his mistake. The pretty woman shook her head. The elders have decided to take back everything from you, including your cultivation. Do you have any objections? If you do, I won't do it for now. You can appeal. Ah Wu bowed deeply. Esteemed ambassador, I have no objections. The pretty woman nodded slightly. She spread open her palm and pressed it down lightly. As soon as she did that, Wu's aura instantly dispersed like tidewater. It wasn't long before Ah Wu had become an ordinary person, and his appearance had practically instantly aged after he became an ordinary person. His current lifespan was less than 10 years. Ah Wu's face was pale, and he didn't dare speak. He had no more in this lifetime. Although he was unwilling, he had no complaints because everything he had was given to him by the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Without the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, he would only be an ordinary person and wouldn't have his current status. The pretty woman glanced at Ah Wu and sighed inwardly. Actually, Ah Wu deserved to die. He didn't respect the Pavilion Master's orders. This was the #1 crime in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. The Pavilion Master was like a god in the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and the elders respected the Pavilion Master so much that ordinary people couldn't imagine it. The elders were shocked that something like this had happened here, and a few old fellows who had been in closed-door cultivation for tens of thousands of years had come out. Anger. She'd never seen the elders so angry. A mere branch president dared to disrespect the Pavilion Master's orders. This was unbearable for those old fellows. The pretty woman glanced at Yu Xian and shook her head slightly. Yu Xian, the mastermind, would probably suffer a fate worse than death. Ignoring the two of them, the pretty girl picked up the Shantian token that Yi Xian had thrown onto the ground and disappeared into the horizon. After the pretty woman disappeared, 2 men in black appeared and took Yu Xian away. Somewhere in the starry sky, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed. Supremacy. In terms of realm, he was now in the supreme realm. Moreover, he was a supreme who could fight against an eternal realm powerhouse. At this moment, Yi Xian felt a little emotional. Forcing himself. The previous battle with Dao Xian Yi was the first time in so many years that he didn't call for help. I can't beat him. Indeed, in the beginning, he had already despaired several times. He really couldn't beat them. But was he supposed to give up just because he couldn't win? Actually, the scariest thing about humans was not despair, nor was it powerlessness, but giving up. No matter how hopeless the situation was, as long as one didn't give up, there would be hope. But once you gave up, even if it wasn't a hopeless situation, you would still be finished. Seeming to think of something, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Looking back on the past, he was really sloppy and flashy before. He didn't have the heart of a powerhouse at all. It was time for him to grow up. Yi Xian took a deep breath. He opened his palm, and Little Soul appeared in his hand. Little Soul, I won't let anything happen to you in the future. Little Soul said, next time something happens, let Xiao Ta carry it. Yi Xian, Xiao Ta laughed. I'll carry it, I'll carry it. The current me has nothing to fear. Yi Xian, Little Soul, at this time, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a black box appeared in his hand. This was the box he took out from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion. What was in this box? Yi Xian curiously opened the box. Inside the box, there was a strange weapon. This weapon had a strange shape. It was completely black, and the front half looked like a pipe. It was as long as an adult's arm, but the back half was not a pipe. At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Holy shit, isn't this a gun?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. A gun? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, "Yes." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. A gun doesn't look like this, right? Xiao Ta said, "This is a gun from the Milky Way, not here." The Milky Way. Yi Xian looked at the gun in the box and was a little puzzled. Xiao Ta, is this thing powerful? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, "In the Milky Way, it's quite powerful. However, for cultivators of your level, this thing is useless. Of course, this could be left by the Pavilion Master. There should be something different." Yi Xian said, "How do you use this thing?" Xiao Ta smiled and said, "It's very simple. Act cool. Oh, no, load it. Load it and you can use it. Yi Xian looked inside the box. Inside the box, there was a small box. He opened the box. There were 10 sharp objects that were as long as 2 thumbs. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "This is a bullet." Yi Xian looked at the bullets. He found that these bullets had strange runes around them. At the top of these bullets, there was a blood-red dot. It was very strange. After Yi Xian pondered for a long time, he finally loaded the bullets. Just as the bullets were inserted into the gun, the entire gun body suddenly shook violently. Then, a voice suddenly sounded from the gun, "Please replenish your spiritual energy." Spiritual energy? Yi Xian hesitated and said, "You can talk." That voice said, "Please don't talk nonsense. If you want to fire the gun, replenish your spiritual energy." Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. Damn, is it so arrogant? Yi Xian didn't bother with it. He took out a star vein. As soon as he took it out, it was directly absorbed by the gun. The gun said, "The spiritual energy is less than 1,000th, and the power is only 1,000th. Do you want to fire?" Yi Xian asked, "Less than 1,000th?" That voice said, "Yes, the more spiritual energy, the more powerful it is." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "If there is enough spiritual energy, how powerful is it?" That voice said, "It shouldn't be a problem to kill you with one shot." Yi Xian was furious. "Can you not be so arrogant? Do you know how strong my body is?" That voice said indifferently, "Don't brag. If you have the guts, try it." Yi Xian immediately said, "Let's try it." Xiao Ta said with a smile, "Play with it. Let it know how terrifying your body is, young master." Yi Xian took out 1,000 star veins, and they were absorbed by the spear in an instant. Yi Xian's expression changed subtly when he saw this. At this moment, a white light suddenly erupted from the gun. The white light spread from the end of the gun to the tip. At the same time, that voice said, "You can begin." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he took out Xiao Ta and placed Xiao Ta at the muzzle of the gun. "Bring it on." Xiao Ta suddenly said, "F***CK. Young master, what do you mean?" Yi Xian smiled embarrassedly. "Xiao Ta, you're tougher than me. You take it." Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, "Young master, are you afraid?" Yi Xian's face darkened. How could that be? "Xiao Ta, you were just transformed by Qing, or sword energy. Do you have to be afraid of something like that?" Xiao Ta said indifferently, "I'm not afraid of it, but it's not necessary. I won't take it. You do it yourself." Yi Xian's face darkened. This Xiao Ta isn't easy to fool now. Yi Xian was about to speak when the beautiful woman from before suddenly appeared here. She gazed at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi. I'm here to." Yi Xian suddenly asked. "Miss, what realm are you at?" The beautiful woman grinned. "Half step to the boundless realm. Half step to the boundless realm." Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he heard this. Damn it. She's actually at the half step to the boundless realm. She's even stronger than Dao Xian? She continued. "Young master, I'm here to apologize." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he waved the spear in his hand and said, "Do you recognize this?" The beautiful woman glanced at the spear in her hand, and then she shook her head. "I haven't." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "You haven't?" The beautiful woman glanced at it once more, and then she shook her head. "I haven't." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "I obtained it by chance. I wonder how strong it is. Miss, can you allow me to test it?" The beautiful woman was slightly stunned, and then she smiled. "Young master Yi wants to test its strength?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The beautiful woman thought for a moment, and then she nodded. "All right." Before she came here, she was having quite a headache about how to obtain Yi Xian's understanding. Now that Yi Xian had made such a request, it was exactly what she wanted. Because in that way, it would be equivalent to her helping Yi Xian, and it would definitely be easier to negotiate. Yi Xian grinned when he saw the beautiful woman agree, and then he raised the spear and pointed it at her. "Miss, be careful." The beautiful woman smiled and said, "Bring it on." Yi Xian was about to pull the trigger when Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, you're holding the spear the wrong way around." Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. He hurriedly turned the spear around and aimed it at the beautiful woman in the distance. In the next moment, he directly pulled the trigger. Bang! A ray of white light suddenly surged out, and then the starry sky in an area of a few million kilometers was instantly obliterated. The woman's pupils constricted, and then she suddenly pressed her hands forward. However, her figure was blasted flying in the next moment. She flew out of Yi Xian's field of vision. At the same time, the bullet carried a powerful wave of energy as it swept towards the depths of the starry sky. It was extremely swift, and it vanished into the boundless universe in the blink of an eye. It flew out of the medium world. At this moment, Yi Xian himself had also retreated hundreds of thousands of feet, because the recoil of that spear attack was too dreadful. The most terrifying part was that his entire right hand had exploded apart when he stopped moving, and his entire body had cracked apart like a spider web. Yi Xian was stunned. "What's that?" Meanwhile, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "That thing isn't like any spear I've seen in the past." In the distance, Yi Xian gently stroked the spear in front of him with his slightly trembling left hand, and he said softly, "Xiao Ta, I've decided to change my occupation to become a spear cultivator." Xiao Ta was speechless. Chapter 2182. One had to admit that Yi Xian was indeed astonished. The might of this thing greatly exceeded his expectations. Putting aside that woman, just his current physical body was an existence that surpassed the limits of the sempiternal realm. However, it had been shattered so easily. Furthermore, it was merely the recoil. Seemingly thinking of something, Yi Xian hurriedly raised his head and looked into the distance. With this look, his expression immediately darkened. Because he could no longer sense that woman's aura. Could it be that she was already gone? Right at this time, at the far end of the starry sky, a phantom floated over. It was precisely that delicate and pretty woman. But at this moment, this woman's physical body was already gone. Furthermore, her soul was extremely illusory. Looking at the incomparably frail, delicate and pretty woman in front of him, a trace of guilt involuntarily welled up in Yi Xian's heart. He nearly blew her up with one shot. How shameful. The delicate and pretty woman looked at Yi Xian, somewhat at a loss. "Young Master Yi. Weren't you a little too ruthless when you attacked?" Yi Xian, the delicate and pretty woman looked at that spear in Yi Xian's hand, a trace of apprehension flashed across her eyes. "This item is?" Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "Your pavilion master gave it to me." Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, you seem to be the one who took it yourself, right?" Yi Xian said seriously in his heart, "If you don't say and I don't say, who will know?" Xiao Ta was silent for a long time before saying, "That makes sense." Yi Xian, at this time, the delicate and pretty woman by the side suddenly said, "The pavilion master gave it to you?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The delicate and pretty woman felt relieved. No wonder it's so terrifying. Yi Xian looked at the delicate and pretty woman. "Miss, how do I address you?" The delicate and pretty woman smiled slightly. "Qinglian." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss Qinglian, did you use your full strength just now?" The delicate and pretty woman nodded. "I did. Furthermore, one of my life-saving talismans has already been used up." Yi Xian asked, "Can this weapon kill boundless realm powerhouses?" The pretty woman hesitated for a moment before she said, "I'm afraid it's quite difficult." "Difficult?" At this time, a voice suddenly sounded out inside that spear. "If there's sufficient spiritual energy, boundless realm powerhouses are trash." Yi Xian smiled and asked, "What's your name?" The voice said, "Little Spear." Yi Xian was slightly stunned, and then he said, "Did your pavilion master give it to you?" Little Spear said, "Yes." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Your pavilion master's name is the same as mine. I also like to choose simple names." Lil Spear said, "I gave myself another name." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What?" Little Spear said, "Big Spear." "It sounds good, right?" Yi Xian's expression froze. *CK, is there a difference? Meanwhile, Qing Lian suddenly said, "The more spirit energy you have, the stronger it is?" Little Spear said, "Yes. So long as there's sufficient spirit energy, then my might is boundless." Qing Lian glanced at Little Spear and didn't speak further. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Little Spear, why did your master place you in the study room?" Little Spear sighed softly when it heard this. "I don't know either." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Do you know where she went?" Little Spear said softly, "I don't know." Yi Xian looked at Qing Lian again, and she shook her head. "I don't know either." Yi Xian fell silent. The pavilion master of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion isn't just an ordinary level of mystery. Meanwhile, Qing Lian suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, what happened before was my Immortal Treasure Pavilion's fault. We've already severely punished Yu Xian. Young Master Yi, please calm your anger." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Miss Qing Lian, I'm not angry." Qing Lian blinked. "Then Young Master Yi, please take back the Black Heaven token." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "There's no need for that, right?" Qing Lian glanced resentfully at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, look, even my body is gone." Yi Xian was speechless. Qing Lian placed the Black Heaven token in Yi Xian's hand, and then she said, "Young Master Yi, this is my Immortal Treasure Pavilion's fault. Please be magnanimous and don't make a fuss about it." As she spoke, she glanced at the spear, and then she withdrew a spatial ring and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. "It's just a small token of my appreciation. Young Master Yi, you must accept it." Yi Xian glanced at the spatial ring, and there were an entire 100,000 star god veins within it. Needless to say, it was a huge sum. Star god veins weren't star veins. Yi Xian put the spatial ring away without batting an eyelid, and then he said seriously, "Miss Qing Lian, what are you talking about?" "I, Yi Xian, am not a petty person." Qing Lian grinned. "Young Master Yi, I apologize on behalf of Immortal Treasure Pavilion once again. I can guarantee that something like that will never happen again in the future." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Qing Lian, may I ask where your headquarters are located?" Qing Lian shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian was stunned. Qing Lian smiled bitterly. "I really don't know. Actually, we thought that the Immortal Treasure Pavilion in our ancient world was our headquarters, but we realized later that it wasn't." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Even you don't know where your headquarters are?" Qing Lian nodded. "Only the pavilion master knows, and we haven't seen her for a long time. However, I heard some news before I came here. She seemed to have appeared in the ancient world of desolation." Yi Xian's brows furrowed slightly. "Ancient world of desolation?" Qing Lian nodded. "A very dangerous place. It's said that there's the legendary boundless aura that can help people reach the boundless realm." Boundless aura. Yi Xian sized up Qing Lian, and then he said, "Miss Qing Lian, you're half-step boundless?" Qing Lian nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian said, "Does your ancient world have boundless realm powerhouses?" Qing Lian smiled and said, "Yes. I understand young Master Ye's meaning. It's not that one must have boundless aura to be able to reach the boundless realm. Cultivating normally, one can also reach the boundless realm. It's just that the difficulty will be much, much higher." As she said, she paused for a moment and continued, "This is just like in the secular world. If there's someone behind you, wouldn't it be much faster to advance? If there's no one, you can only endure to the top, right? Yi Xian was speechless. Qing Lian continued, in this world, there are many outstanding people. However, resources are more important. Without cultivation resources, no matter how heaven-defying a person is, it's hard to advance an inch. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. If I have cultivation resources, I should be able to beat up the 3 swords. Xiao Ta was speechless. Qing Lian smiled faintly. Young Master Yi, I have to go back and report. What do you plan to do next? Plan? Yi Xian thought for a moment and then said, Miss just said that the Great Desolation ancient world is very dangerous? Qing Lian nodded. Yes. Speaking up to here, she was slightly stunned. Then she said, Young Master Yi, could it be that you want to go to the Great Desolation ancient world? Yi Xian smiled and said, yes. Qing Lian said solemnly, with young master's current strength, if you go to that place, I'm afraid. Yi Xian smiled and said, I'll go and have a try. Qing Lian hesitated for a moment and then said, then young Master Yi, be careful. After saying that, she cupped her fists and said, see you again. Yi Xian smiled and said, see you again. Qing Lian turned around and disappeared into the horizon. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, are you really going to this Great Desolation ancient world? Yi Xian nodded. Why, you don't want to go? Xiao Ta hesitated for a moment and then said, should we act tough here before we leave? Yi Xian said unhappily, look at you. Xiao Ta smiled and said, I'm too narrow-minded. Yi Xian suddenly said, we have to act tough for at least a year before we leave. Xiao Ta was speechless. Yi Xian laughed out loud. Then he disappeared into the horizon. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at a mountain peak. On the mountain peak, there was an unknown academy. Yi Xian arrived at the academy gate. Just as he reached the gate suddenly opened and a girl appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing this girl, Yi Xian smiled and said, hello, I'm looking for Sister Nian. The girl blinked, you're Yi Xian, right? Yi Xian nodded, yes. The girl smiled and said, you're late. Yi Xian frowned slightly, what do you mean? The girl smiled and said, Sister Nian has already brought Miss An and the others to the Great Desolation ancient world. Great Desolation ancient world. Yi Xian said in a low voice, what are they doing there? The girl smiled and said, Sister Nian said that they need to reach the boundless realm. Hence, she brought them there. Great Desolation ancient world. Yi Xian thought about it and then said, understood. With that, he turned around and left. At this moment, the girl suddenly said, hey, wait. Yi Xian turned around and looked at the girl, what's wrong? The girl blinked and grinned, Sister Nian said that you're quite thick-skinned. Is that true? Hearing this, Yi Xian's face darkened, do you think I'm thick-skinned? The girl sized up Yi Xian and then giggled, I don't know. But I think you're quite handsome. Yi Xian gave her a thumbs up, Miss, I have to say that you have good taste. Your future is limitless. The girl covered her mouth and giggled, you're really thick-skinned. Yi Xian laughed, turned around, and rode on his sword. In the air, he rode on his sword and spun a few times in a flashy manner before disappearing at the end of the horizon. Below, the girl looked at the streaks of sword light in the distance and praised, so handsome. In the endless starry sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword. This time, his target was the ancient world of desolation. Why the ancient world of desolation? Unlike before, this time, he wanted to take the initiative to look for danger. To challenge himself. To force himself. He wanted to challenge his own limits. After what happened before, he understood that he couldn't be the king of relying on others anymore. Unlike before, this time, he wasn't just thinking about it. He had completely come to a realization. The more useless he was now, the more helpless he would be in the future. If he didn't force himself, he would never know how outstanding he was. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, although we've both broken through, if we change places, I'm afraid we'll become little brothers again." Yi Xian laughed and then said, "This time, I definitely won't rely on Qing. If I let Qing help me again, my surname isn't Yi." With that, he disappeared into the starry sky. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, I feel like you're insulting my intelligence." Yi Xian. P.S. A new journey begins. Wait for me. I'll save the manuscript and give you a surprise. Chapter 2183. The Ancient World of Desolation. Two women were walking slowly amidst a certain mountain range. They were Mu Niannian and Enlanxiu. Mu Niannian suddenly raised her head and gazed at a lone mountain that towered into the clouds, and she grinned. "We're almost there." Enlanxiu gazed at the lone mountain in the distance and spoke softly. "Big Sister Nian, with your strength, there's no need for you to stay here at all. Right?" The corners of Mu Niannian's mouth curled up slightly. "I'll accompany you." Enlanxiu turned to look at Mu Niannian. "Why?" Mu Niannian smiled. "I really like you, little girl." Enlanxiu fell silent. Mu Niannian patted Enlanxiu lightly on the shoulder and spoke softly. "Your natural talent is much better than that little fellow, but do you know why you're unable to surpass him? Even if you do, he'll surpass you in no time." Enlanxiu shook her head. Mu Niannian blinked. "Because he has a backer." Enlanxiu was speechless. Mu Niannian smiled and said, "Does it hurt?" Enlanxiu nodded. Mu Niannian smiled. "Actually, there's another reason, and it's because your experiences are different from his. You've been pampered since a young age, whereas he's been miserable since a young age. Don't be fooled by his flashy ways and frivolous behavior. I've investigated him, and the bitterness he suffered when he was young isn't something an ordinary person can endure. It's precisely because of this reason that his will far exceeds an ordinary person's." She paused for a moment as she spoke, and then she continued. "Unfortunately, Miss Tianming wasn't able to persevere and chose to show herself in the end, causing him to feel a sense of reliance." Enlanxiu nodded lightly. The Yi Xian of the past was really different from the current Yi Xian. He was still the same person, but the current Yi Xian was indeed a little flashy. In the past, Yi Xian was very serious. She still remembered the scene when she first met Yi Xian. At that time, Yi Xian was like a wolf, his body exuding a kind of bloodthirsty aura that wanted to choose people to devour, but he did not lose his tenderness, especially his feelings towards his younger sister, which made her a little envious. A man who was both cruel and tender. Mu Niannian continued, "Now, Lady Tianming and his father want to change him." Enlanxiu looked at Mu Niannian. "Change him?" Mu Niannian nodded. "Let him rely on himself." Enlanxiu said in a low voice, "Big Sister Nian, has something happened?" Mu Niannian smiled and said, "Miss Tianming went to the Milky Way to suppress a certain existence. When she spoke up to here, she shook her head slightly. There's no need for us to worry so much. Because there are some things that even I feel slightly hopeless about. So, let those three fellows and that little fellow in the future worry about them." Enlanxiu looked at Mu Niannian. "Will the future me be able to help?" Mu Niannian fell silent for a moment before she said, "You want to help?" Enlanxiu nodded. Mu Niannian smiled. "Then work hard. So long as you work hard, then there's hope." Enlanxiu turned to look at the lone mountain in the distance, and her gaze grew firmer. In the next moment, she sped up. Mu Niannian gazed at Enlanxiu's lonely figure and sighed in his heart. "Little fellow, don't let this little girl down in the future. She's silently sacrificed a lot for you." It didn't take long for Enlanxiu to arrive at the foot of the lone mountain. Meanwhile, a figure appeared on the mountain. The figure carried a spear on her back, and she looked down at Enlanxiu. "My inheritance isn't passed down to a mediocre person." Enlanxiu raised her head and looked at the illusory figure. She opened her palm and a long spear appeared in her hand. She pointed the spear at the illusory figure and said, "My master, Marshal Godin, is not here for the inheritance, but for a battle." She was here for a battle, not for an inheritance. On Lonely Mountain, the phantom suddenly laughed out loud. Interesting. Ha! As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up and charged down with the spear in his hand. In an instant, an extremely terrifying aura swept down from the sky, and the heavens and the earth trembled because of it, and Lanxio's eyes narrowed slightly. In the next moment, she suddenly shot into the sky. Yi Xian was flying on his sword somewhere in the starry sky. Yi Xian gazed towards the depths of the starry sky and spoke softly, "Little An." Actually, he missed Lanxio a little as well. And Lanxio could be said to be the first woman he'd ever fallen in love with. The feeling he felt when he saw her for the first time was indescribable. But at that time, he had to take care of his younger sister, so he'd never thought about relationships. Meanwhile, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young master, can I ask you a question?" Yi Xian smiled, "There's no need to be polite between us." "Go ahead." Xiaota said, "You have so many women. Which one do you like the most?" Yi Xian said, "What did you say before?" Xiaota said, "I can ask you a question." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Fuck off." Xiaota was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly sped up, and he vanished into the depths of the starry sky in the blink of an eye. 3 days later, Yi Xian arrived at the ancient world of Great Desolation. As soon as he entered the ancient world of Great Desolation, a woman in a white dress stood in front of him. The woman in white was very beautiful and had a good figure. She was very pleasing to the eye. Of course, Yi Xian wasn't that kind of person. He only took a few glances before looking away. The woman in white smiled, "Young master, you looked at me a few times just now. Your eyes were mainly on my chest and waist. But your eyes are clear, without any evil intentions. I'm very surprised." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Of course, I, Yi Xian, am free from vulgar tastes. I look at everything with the eyes of art." The woman in white covered her mouth and laughed, "Young master, you're really interesting." As she spoke, she began to introduce herself, "Young master, my name is Sang Yu. I'm a small manager of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion." Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. There was a Celestial Treasure Pavilion here? Sang Yu smiled, "Judging from your expression, I presume you know about my Celestial Treasure Pavilion." Yi Xian smiled, "The Celestial Treasure Pavilion is spread throughout the universe. Who doesn't know about it?" Sang Yu smiled sweetly, "Young master, this is your first time here, right?" Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Sang Yu blinked and said, "Then does young master want to understand the ancient world of Great Desolation?" Yi Xian smiled, "How many god star veins?" Sang Yu smiled, "Young master, you're right. If it's a simple understanding, then you only need 5 god star veins. If you want to understand it in detail, then you need 20 god star veins. If you want to understand it in depth, then you need 50 god star veins. 50 god star veins. Yi Xian fell silent. Damn. This Celestial Treasure Pavilion really knows how to make money. If more people came today, then wouldn't the Celestial Treasure Pavilion make a killing? The pavilion master of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion is definitely a super rich woman. She might even be much richer than Sister Shui. Meanwhile, Sang Yu suddenly smiled and said, "Young master, do you need it?" Yi Xian grinned and was about to speak when a voice suddenly resounded from the side, "Sang Yu." Sang Yu's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she heard this. She turned around and saw a young man walking over slowly. The young man wore a loose white robe, had a handsome appearance, and held a folding fan in his hand. He was extremely handsome. The young man walked over to Sang Yu and grinned, "Sang Yu, you've come out to promote yourself again." Sang Yu spoke indifferently, "Young master Ah Gai, this is my job." Ah Gai sighed lightly, "I told you. I'll support you." Sang Yu smiled, I like to rely on my own hard work to strive for the things I want. Ah Gai sighed once more. Sang Yu, why bother? Sang Yu gazed at Ah Gai. Young master Ah Gai, I still have to work. As soon as she finished speaking, she gazed at Yi Xian and grinned. Young master, do you need it? Yi Xian glanced at the two of them and decided not to interfere in the business of others, so he was about to refuse and leave. Meanwhile, Ah Gai suddenly withdrew a spatial ring, and she gazed at Sang Yu. Sang Yu, so long as you're willing to follow me, then the 500 star god veins within this spatial ring are yours. Sang Yu's face was expressionless. Young master Ah Gai, I'm not that sort of person. Ah Gai withdrew another spatial ring. 1000. Sang Yu stared at Ah Gai and was slightly angry. Are you insulting me? Ah Gai withdrew another spatial ring. 5000. Sang Yu stared fixedly at Ah Gai. Fuck off. Obviously, she was really angry. A trace of a cold glow flashed through Ah Gai's eyes. Woman, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. A trace of a cold glow flashed through Sang Yu's eyes. Young master Ah Gai, please respect me. A trace of disdain flashed in Ah Gai's eyes. You're just a lowly little steward. It's your good fortune that this young master took a liking to you, but you've given this young master face time and again. Have I given you face? When she spoke up to this point, she seemed to have thought of something, and she suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian. Fuck off. Yi Xian blinked. I've never seen someone so arrogant in my entire life. Ah Gai stared at Yi Xian. Do you see it now? Yi Xian nodded. Ah Gai stared fixedly at Yi Xian. I'll give you one last chance. Disappear from this young master's sight in 3 breaths of time, otherwise, hiss. Meanwhile, a sword suddenly pierced through Ah Gai's throat, and a strand of blood sprayed out. Seeing this scene, Sang Yu's eyes widened in disbelief. Ah Gai's face was also full of disbelief, and her mind went blank. Yi Xian walked slowly to Ah Gai, and he looked at Ah Gai. The wind was too strong. I didn't hear what you said. Can you say it again? Ah Gai stared fixedly at Yi Xian. My father is the vice president of this celestial treasure pavilion. If you dare to touch me, Yi Xian suddenly said, I'll let you go now, but don't come looking for trouble with me in the future, alright? Ah Gai immediately said angrily, you're dreaming. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. Go accompany Tian Yi. After speaking, he directly slashed out with his sword. Hiss. Ah Gai's head flew out. Tian Yi. Chapter 2184. Killed. Seeing that Yi Xian really killed Ah Gai, Sang Yu's face instantly changed. She didn't expect that this man's strength would be so terrifying, killing just like that. Sang Yu stared at Yi Xian. Do you know what you've done? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Sang Yu said angrily. Do you know who he is? He's the son of the vice president of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, the only son. Do you know how serious the consequences are for killing him? Yi Xian blinked, and then revealed that terrified expression, the vice president's son. I don't know. I saw him bullying you, so Sang Yu was slightly stunned, and then said, you killed him because of me? Yi Xian hurriedly nodded, yes. Sang Yu stared at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian hesitated, and then said a little shyly, you're born to be handsome. Xiao Ta. Sang Yu stared at Yi Xian, and after a moment, she took a deep breath, and then said, let's go quickly. Yi Xian glanced at Ah Gai's corpse, and then said, then what about you? Sang Yu fell silent. I should be fine. Yi Xian hurriedly said, why don't we go together? Sang Yu looked at Yi Xian. Elope with you? Yi Xian was about to speak, but Sang Yu shook her head. If I go with you, you'll definitely die. If you go by yourself, there's still a chance of survival. Yi Xian smiled lightly. Silly girl, if I go, you'll definitely die. Sang Yu looked at Yi Xian, and an inexplicable trace of goodwill arose in her heart. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Seeing this aura, Sang Yu's face instantly turned pale. She hurriedly walked up to Yi Xian and took out a talisman and handed it to Yi Xian. This is a transcendent grade teleportation talisman. You can use this talisman to teleport to the star field. Go quickly, Yi Xian asked, then what about you? Sang Yu said angrily, I'm from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, he won't do anything to me. If you don't leave, you're dead. Moreover, it will implicate your loved ones. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your loved ones. Yi Xian was silent. Think of Dad and Qing'er. He felt that he was thinking too much. It was better to think for himself. At this time, Sang Yu suddenly said angrily, still not leaving? Yi Xian was about to speak when an old man suddenly appeared here. Sang Yu's face paled when he saw the old man. The old man was the vice president of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion branch in this realm, Ananda. Ananda glanced at Agai's corpse. After a moment of silence, he looked at Yi Xian. Do you know he's from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Ananda stared at Yi Xian. Since you knew, you still dared to kill him. I think your identity is not ordinary. Tell me who your backer is and let the old man know. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, if my backer is strong, you won't look for trouble with me, right? Ananda said, yes. Yi Xian nodded. Have you heard of the Three Swords? Ananda frowned. What's that? Never heard of it. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, have you heard of the Master of Time? Ananda narrowed his eyes. Of course. Yi Xian said seriously, we are sworn brothers. Ananda immediately flew into a rage. Brat, are you insulting the intelligence of the old man? Who is the Master of Time? He is the god of time who controls the world and is respected by all cultivators. Yet you say you are sworn brothers with him. Are you retarded? Hearing this, Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Damn it. There's no justice in this world. Why is it that no one believes me when I tell the truth? After the battle with Dao Xianyi, he wanted to turn over a new leaf and be a new man. He no longer wanted to be flashy. But he found that it was impossible. Honest people don't have a good life in this world. Ananda stared at Yi Xian. Who are you? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, I'm a rogue cultivator. Ananda said angrily, how dare a rogue cultivator kill someone from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion? Are you insulting the intelligence of the old man? Tell me, who are you? Yi Xian's face darkened. I'm your father, okay? Ananda was enraged. Are you insulting the old man? You. Yi Xian was also enraged. Old bastard, not only will I insult you, I will also beat you to death. After saying that, he disappeared on the spot. In the distance, Ananda's expression changed drastically. He immediately threw a punch. Boom! With an explosion of white light, Ananda retreated tens of thousands of meters away. When he stopped, his physical body was shattered and only his soul was left. A sword instantly shattered his physical body. Ananda was stunned. Yi Xian was also stunned. He sized up Ananda and was a little confused. You are not in the boundless realm? Ananda looked at Yi Xian and was also a little confused. You are in the boundless realm? Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, he realized that this old man was not even in the immortal realm. He was a supreme realm expert. Shouldn't there be boundless realm experts everywhere in this place? At this moment, Ananda said with a trembling voice, Young master, are you in the boundless realm? Yi Xian looked at Ananda and was about to make a move. Ananda suddenly knelt down with a thud. Senior, I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive me, Senior. Yi Xian looked at Ananda. I killed your son. Ananda hurriedly said, that's what he deserved. He offended you, Senior. He deserves it. Yi Xian was silent. Reason? At this moment, Yi Xian's heart was very complicated. All the reasons in the world were built on the foundation of powerful strength. With strength, the other party would take the initiative to reason with you. At this moment, Ananda said again, "Senior, please be magnanimous, Qi." Before Ananda finished his words, a sword pierced through his forehead. The next moment, Ananda was absorbed by the green profound sword. Completely erased. At the side, Sengyu glanced at Yi Xian with a trace of fear in her eyes. Yi Xian looked at Sengyu and said with a smile, "Do you think I'm cruel?" Sengyu hesitated and said, "Do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Let's hear the lie first." Sengyu said in a low voice, "If one isn't ruthless, one can't stand firm. It's understandable for you to do this. If it were me, I would do the same." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "What about the truth?" Sengyu glanced at Yi Xian. "Are you pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger?" Yi Xian's expression froze. Sengyu hesitated and said, "What you said to me earlier was all false. Or, it was just a random action on a whim, right?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "If I didn't make a move, what would you have done?" Sengyu fell silent. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Miss Sengyu, can you give me some information about the ancient world of desolation?" Sengyu hurriedly passed a spatial ring to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to take it when Sengyu hurriedly said, "No, there's no need." Yi Xian said with a smile, "That won't do. As a person, I still have my principles." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated over to Sengyu. Sengyu looked at the spatial ring but didn't take it. At this moment, she was still slightly afraid of Yi Xian. He killed me just like that. He didn't hesitate at all. It was too terrifying. Yi Xian smiled, and then he placed the spatial ring in Sengyu's hand. After that, he turned around and left. As if he'd thought of something, he said, "If anyone from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion comes looking for trouble with you, then ask them to come look for me. My name is Yi Xian." As soon as he finished speaking, he had already disappeared into the horizon. Sengyu looked at Yi Xian in the distance and said softly, "Swordsman." Yi Xian. At the end of the horizon, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, where are we going now?" Yi Xian stopped. He looked around with a serious look on his face. The ancient world of desolation. From the information given by Sengyu, he knew that the ancient world of desolation was a rather special world. There were no forces here. There were very few people in this place, but there were many ruins of the great desolation. To put it simply, this place used to be very glorious. However, for some unknown reason, the civilization of this place disappeared. Following that, the ancient forces of this place turned into ruins and mystic realms. Many ancient martial arts civilizations were buried in this place. Previously, Qing Lian said that this place was dangerous because some experts from the ancient ruins had awakened in this place. Moreover, there was a dangerous creature in this place, Spirit Demon. A special creature that looked like a demon but wasn't a demon. It lived by eating living things. Eating living things. Yi Xian suddenly thought of Arya. Arya seemed to like eating living things too. However, according to Xiao Ta, after Arya went to the Milky Way, she started to like eating food from the Milky Way. Thinking of this, Yi Xian couldn't help but shake his head. If no one kept Arya in check, wouldn't she eat all over the universe? Moreover, if she didn't use the 3 swords, no one would be able to stop her. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked around. Then, he said, "This place is too big. It seems that to find Shaoan and Sister Nian, I'll have to ask the Celestial Treasure Pavilion for help." After saying that, he was about to look for the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. However, at this moment, he frowned and turned around. Not far in front of him stood a monster. The monster looked like a human, but it had a pair of wings and its eyes were deep purple. Spirit Demon. Yi Xian had already guessed the monster's identity. The spirit demon stared at Yi Xian with excitement in its eyes as if it had encountered some delicious food. However, it didn't attack, as if it was afraid. Yi Xian asked, "What's the matter?" Greed suddenly flashed in the spirit demon's eyes. Blood. In the next moment, it disappeared on the spot and punched at Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned slightly. What the hell? Without any nonsense, Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Chi! A wave of sword light tore through the air and the spirit demon was sent flying thousands of meters away. When it stopped, a sword suddenly pierced its forehead and nailed it to the ground. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly resounded from the distant mountain peak. Human, if you dare hurt him, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and swept it, sending the spirit demon's head flying. Yi Xian looked at the distant horizon with a calm expression. I don't have a good temper. Don't threaten me, otherwise I'll slaughter your spirit demon clan. Chapter 2185. Presumptuous. The voice in the distant sky suddenly roared, "How dare you talk about slaughtering my spirit demon race? Do you think you?" Yi Xian's palm suddenly opened, and the azure profound sword vanished on the spot. Pust. The voice in the distant sky stopped abruptly. At the same time, a bloody head slowly fell from the sky. A spirit demon's head. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure profound sword returned to its scabbard. Then, he turned around and left. Feud. Yi Xian's principle was that he would not offend those who did not offend him, but if someone offended him, he would definitely kill them. Unless, he couldn't beat them. Before Yi Xian took a few steps, footsteps suddenly came from behind him. Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. He turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not far away. The middle-aged man smiled. Young Master Yi? Yi Xian smiled. Immortal Treasure Pavilion? The middle-aged man nodded. I'm Immortal Treasure Pavilion's leader, Li Sheng. Yi Xian asked, "What's the matter?" Li Sheng looked at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi is Immortal Treasure Pavilion's super VIP. Why did you kill 2 people from Immortal Treasure Pavilion? Yi Xian said with a smile, "Are you here to denounce me?" Li Sheng smiled. Young Master Yi, I'm only here to ask for an explanation. Yi Xian chuckled. Then, does President Li Sheng know the ins and outs of this matter? Li Sheng smiled. Young Master Yi, Guy did offend young Master Yi, but it's not a crime worthy of death, right? Yi Xian stared at Li Sheng. He offended me, but why is it not a crime worthy of death? Do I need him to kill me for it to be a crime worthy of death? The smile on Li Sheng's face gradually faded. Young Master Yi, forgive me for saying too much, but aren't you being too ruthless with your actions? As the saying goes, leave a way out for everything. Yi Xian sneered. He's not my son, so why should I leave a way out for him? Moreover, haven't you heard of the saying releasing a tiger back to the mountain? Li Sheng looked at Yi Xian without a word. Yi Xian suddenly turned and left. At this moment, Li Sheng suddenly said in a deep voice, Young Master Yi, I don't know why the pavilion master gave you the profound heaven token. I just want to give you a piece of advice. You can't be too complacent and you can't be too ruthless, otherwise. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and swung his sword. Li Sheng was forced back tens of thousands of feet. After Li Sheng stopped, his right arm was severed at the base, and blood splattered everywhere. Yi Xian looked at Li Sheng. Are you teaching me how to do things? Li Sheng looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. You. Why are you so strong? Li Sheng looked at Yi Xian in disbelief. You. Why are you so strong? Seeing Yi Xian walk over, Li Sheng's face changed. He quickly said, Young Master Yi, I'm not here to denounce you. I'm here. Seeing Yi Xian's thumb on the hilt of his sword, Li Sheng was shocked. He quickly said, Young Master Yi, the vice president of Celestial Treasure Pavilion, offended young Master Yi. I'm here to apologize. Offer gifts and apologize. Yi Xian stopped. He looked at Li Sheng. How do you want to compensate? Li Sheng hesitated. He took out a storage ring and placed it in front of Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, please accept it. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring. There were 30,000 star god veins in the storage ring. Seeing this, Yi Xian could not help but frown. He looked at Li Sheng and said, President Li Sheng, as far as I know, I have the profound heaven token and have the authority to use all the divine items in the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, right? Hearing this, Li Sheng's expression changed. Young Master Yi, Yi Xian looked at Li Sheng. From now on, Celestial Treasure Pavilion is under my control. Li Sheng flew into a rage. Young Master Yi, how could you do this, you? Before he finished speaking, a sword suddenly pierced through his forehead. Chi! Li Sheng was rooted to the spot. Li Sheng glared at Yi Xian and said angrily, Young Master Yi, what's the difference between your actions and a bandit's? Yi Xian took out the profound heaven token. Let me ask you, this token was given to me by your pavilion master. Holding this token is equivalent to meeting the pavilion master, right? Li Sheng was dumbfounded. Young Master Yi. What nonsense are you talking about? This token is a VIP token. When did it become equivalent to meeting the pavilion master? Are you making things up out of nothing? Yi Xian frowned. No. With that, the azure profound sword trembled slightly and began to absorb Li Sheng's soul. Li Sheng's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly said, I remember now. There is. Young Master Yi, there is. Yi Xian blinked. There really is? Li Sheng nodded, sweating profusely. There is. There really is. Yi Xian nodded slightly, opened his palm, and the azure profound sword returned to his hand. He glanced at Li Sheng, to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Li Sheng was a little hesitant. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes, and a hint of killing intent flashed in them. Seeing this, Li Sheng's expression changed drastically, and hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, this way please. At this moment, he could not help but want to slap himself. He was also stupid. Why did he come looking for this young Master Yi? He was courting death. A moment later, Yi Xian and Li Sheng left. Not long after the two left, a spirit demon appeared. The spirit demon looked at the departing Yi Xian and Li Sheng with excitement in his eyes. What a special bloodline. With that, he turned around and disappeared into the horizon. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion was located in a valley. Compared to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion he saw before, this one was slightly simpler. However, there was also a 9th floor here. Li Sheng said, Young Master Yi, you can stay on the 8th floor. Yi Xian looked directly at the 9th floor. That's where the pavilion master lives, right? Li Sheng nodded, yes. No one is allowed to enter. Yi Xian nodded slightly, then walked directly to the 9th floor. Li Sheng's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, the pavilion master has ordered that no one is allowed to enter, not even you. You? Yi Xian turned his head to look at Li Sheng. Do you know my relationship with the pavilion master? Li Sheng was stunned. Relationship? What relationship? Yi Xian suddenly glared at Li Sheng. Don't let your imagination run wild. I don't have that kind of relationship with the pavilion master. With that, he turned around and walked to the 9th floor. Li Sheng was dumbfounded. *CK, did I let my imagination run wild? That kind of relationship. Li Sheng suddenly felt his scalp go numb. Why did the pavilion master give this young man the black heaven token? Could it be? Thinking of this, Li Sheng's body suddenly trembled, and he did not dare to continue thinking. At this time, Yi Xian had entered the 9th floor. Inside the 9th floor, it was still as simple as before. There was only a bookshelf and a desk. The desk was by the side, and one could see the vast mountain range in the distance. Yi Xian walked to the bookshelf. The bookshelf was filled with books, but the words were words he had never seen before. Yi Xian glanced at the books, then said, Xiao Ta, do you understand them? Xiao Ta said, I don't. Yi Xian frowned slightly, haven't you been to the Milky Way galaxy? Xiao Ta said, I went there to show off, not to learn. Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. F*ck, he thought of a phrase, ignorant and incompetent. Yi Xian shook his head, then put away all the books. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, you don't understand them, why did you put them away? Yi Xian laughed mischievously, it doesn't matter if I don't understand them, maybe my son will be able to understand them in the future. As a father, prepare some treasures for him first. Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, you don't have a son. Yi Xian did not care about this broken tower. He walked to the desk. On the desk, there was an ancient book. He could understand the words in this ancient book. In the ancient book, there were 4 big words, Law of Conservation. Law of Conservation? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He flipped to a page, and a line of words entered his eyes, Law of Conservation, the law that everything in the universe has a constant value. Simply put, no matter what it is, its quantity, no matter what happens, will not change. Even if the universe collapses, its ultimate quantity still exists. Cultivating with this law, life will never die, martial arts skills will never be destroyed. Yi Xian was silent for a long time. He flipped to the next page. This state of immortality. There are too many loopholes. If you don't understand the law of eternity, how can you be truly immortal? This strange world, the realms are messy, there are too many loopholes. There is no complete and detailed system of cultivation realms. Forget it, since I'm here, let me organize a complete system of cultivation realms. From today onwards, let me create a new era. What era should I call it? Yi Xian quickly flipped to another page, Era of Acting Cool. Seeing these 4 words, Yi Xian's expression froze. He quickly looked back. Not good, not good. It's too vulgar. Yi Xian continued to flip, but the back was blank. Nothing? Yi Xian frowned slightly. He flipped a few more pages. All were blank, obviously. The other party did not continue writing. Yi Xian looked at the ancient book in front of him, his heart secretly pondering. It was not that the other party did not write on purpose, because after the last sentence, he saw a stroke. Obviously, the other party suddenly had something to do and left. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then softly said, This pavilion master is really not simple. He did not understand what the law of eternity was, but from what the pavilion master wrote, it seemed to be very awesome. Also, Qing said that the pavilion master's knowledge was above Sister Nian's. Was the Milky Way so awesome? At this time, Xiao Ta suddenly said, I understand. Yi Xian was a little curious. Understand what? Xiao Ta said in a deep voice, understand why there are so many realms here, and it's messy. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, what do you mean? Xiao Ta said, young master, do you know, in master's era, the cultivation realm system was actually very complete. Do you know why it was complete? Yi Xian asked, why? Xiao Ta said, because the realm system of that era was created by the first complete sister Tianming, so the realm system of that era was complete, and that era was called the Tianming era. One person suppressed the 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional, dominating the ages. But in our era, Sister Tianming definitely would not waste time on this, so our realm system of our era is so messy. Yi Xian was silent for a long time, then said, I understand. As he said that, he looked at the ancient book, then said, this pavilion master is creating a new era. Yes, I will help her. When the time comes, let her leave me a name. What should I leave? Emperor Yi? Mystic Emperor? Sword Emperor? Xiao Ta suddenly said, act tough Emperor. Yi Xian. Asking for votes. 1. Chapter 2186. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian's face darkened. Act tough Emperor? How vulgar. Xiao Ta suddenly said, young master, you said you wanted to help him. How are you going to help him? I don't think you know anything. Yi Xian said seriously, I'm not telling you. With that, he put away the unfinished ancient book. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian looked around and said softly, this pavilion master is indeed not an ordinary person. This tycoon. Oh, no, this friend, I'm definitely going to befriend him. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian left the room. Li Sheng looked at the empty study and fell silent. Damn it. I found a bandit. Yi Xian said, where is the celestial treasure pavilion's treasury? Hearing that, Li Sheng's face changed. Young Master Yi, you can't do that. Those are the celestial treasure pavilion's assets. In theory, only the pavilion master can use them. You. Yi Xian took out the Xiantian token. Seeing this token is like seeing the pavilion master. In theory, I am the pavilion master now. Is there a problem? Li Sheng, Yi Xian's face was expressionless. Take me there. His voice turned cold. Li Sheng's heart shook. He didn't dare to offend Yi Xian, so he hurriedly brought Yi Xian to the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's treasury. Actually, outsiders wouldn't dare to bully the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Because the Pavilion Master was really awesome. When the Pavilion Master came to this world, he had already shocked some of the super experts in this world. Therefore, even some of the big shots of the ancient forbidden areas wouldn't go against the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. On the contrary, they would give the Celestial Treasure Pavilion some face. But Yi Xian was different. This guy was not an outsider. He had the Xiantian token that the Pavilion Master had given him. Li Sheng sighed in his heart and felt helpless. Why would the Pavilion Master give the Xiantian token to a bandit? After all, he had given the Xiantian token to the Pavilion Master before, but the Xiantian token hadn't chosen the bandit. Sigh. Li Sheng sighed in his heart. He had really found a bandit. Not long after, Li Sheng brought Yi Xian to the treasury of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. It was actually just a small room, but inside the room, there were hundreds of storage rings. Hundreds of them. Yi Xian blinked and didn't waste any time. He waved his right hand and collected all the storage rings. Li Sheng's face instantly turned pale. Young Master Yi. This is the Pavilion Master's, Yi Xian said seriously, she and I are inseparable. Li Sheng, Yi Xian lightly patted Li Sheng on the shoulder and said, do your best. With that, he turned around and left. In the same place, Li Sheng was silent. After a long time, he quickly left. Not long after, he arrived at a secret compartment. He took out a talisman and crushed it, then sent a voice transmission. Pavilion Master, this youth is a bandit, a bandit. Yi Xian returned to the 8th floor. Then, he returned to Xiao Ta. He took out all the storage rings and scanned them with his divine sense. With this scan, his whole body directly trembled. In the storage rings, there were more than 1 billion star god veins. More than 1 billion. Yi Xian felt his head buzzing. Were star god veins cabbages? Needless to say, Yi Xian was really shocked. Was this celestial treasure pavilion so rich? Other than star god veins, there were countless heavenly treasures and divine objects in the storage rings. There were countless of them. I've profited. At this moment, Yi Xian's face suddenly changed. In the next moment, the storage rings in Xiao Ta's body directly turned into streams of light and rushed out of Xiao Ta. Then, they tore through space and flew in a certain direction. Yi Xian was shocked and hurriedly tried to suppress them. However, he was shocked to find that those storage rings directly ignored his suppression and in the blink of an eye, disappeared into the end of space and time. Yi Xian was numb. The duck that was in his mouth flew away. It must be that Pavilion Master who made a move. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. So stingy. At this moment, Li Sheng suddenly appeared at the door. Yi Xian looked at Li Sheng, and Li Sheng smiled slightly. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. You actually scolded me." After saying that, he directly turned into a stream of sword light and charged at Li Sheng. Li Sheng. Soon, Li Sheng's shrill scream sounded in the celestial treasure pavilion. Although the current Yi Xian was only at the supremacy realm, his strength was not the slightest bit weaker than a boundless realm. Moreover, the green profound sword in his hand could help him raise his cultivation realm. Not only that, there was also the power of time. However, he would not use it under normal circumstances, because he did not want to let himself overly rely on external objects. His current principle was that if the enemy did not call him ancestor, he would not draw the green profound sword. I cannot use external objects, but I must have them. After a long time, Yi Xian walked out of the celestial treasure pavilion, and he was slightly displeased as he looked towards the distant horizon. A few hundred spatial rings, over 1 billion star divine veins, and countless treasures of heaven and earth were gone just like that. Gone. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly appeared by Yi Xian's side, and the old man bowed slightly. "Young Master Yi, we've found out the whereabouts of Miss and that you wanted us to investigate." Yi Xian asked. "Where?" The old man withdrew a map and passed it to Yi Xian. "The northern wilderness." Yi Xian nodded and put the map away. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, that place is very dangerous." Yi Xian said, "From now on, that place is even more dangerous." The old man was slightly stunned, and then he said, "What do you mean?" Yi Xian glanced at the old man and said, "Because I'm going." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly rode his sword and vanished into the horizon. On the spot, the old man remained silent for a long time before he said, "Amazing." On the 7th level of the Immortal Treasure Pavilion, Li Sheng remained silent as he watched Yi Xian vanish into the horizon. He'd just been beaten up by Yi Xian. However, he wasn't angry, because he noticed that Yi Xian's strength was much more terrifying than he'd imagined. A thought suddenly arose in Li Sheng's mind. Could there really be something going on between the pavilion master and this young Master Yi? Li Sheng couldn't help but shiver when he thought up to this point. The northern wilderness was located at the north of the ancient world of desolation. When Yi Xian arrived at the northern wilderness, he frowned. A shapeless pressure. Yi Xian looked into the distance, and he saw a lone mountain at the end of his vision. Shaoan had appeared there before. Yi Xian suddenly rode his sword and vanished on the spot. But a moment later, he frowned because he noticed that the pressure he felt was more than 10 times stronger when he rode his sword. "Can't fly?" Yi Xian didn't force it. He landed on the ground and walked. After a while, Yi Xian arrived at the foot of the lone mountain. He raised his head and looked up. At this moment, a phantom appeared on the lone mountain. The phantom carried a long spear on his back and stood there like the ruler of this world, giving off an extremely terrifying pressure. So strong. This was the first thought that came to Yi Xian's mind. The phantom looked down at Yi Xian. "Are you here for the inheritance?" Yi Xian shook his head. "Junior came here to look for someone. She seemed to have appeared here before." The phantom looked at Yi Xian. "Are they 2 women?" Yi Xian nodded quickly. "Senior, do you know where they are now?" The phantom said, "They just left not long ago." "Left?" Yi Xian asked again, "Where did they go?" The phantom pointed to the north. Yi Xian cupped his fists. "Thank you." With that, he was about to chase after them. But at this time, the phantom suddenly said, "Young man, are you interested in inheriting my Dao?" Yi Xian hesitated, and then said, "Senior, I came here to look for someone." The phantom suddenly pointed to a dried corpse below. "Do you know, this person knelt here to beg for my inheritance. Even in death, he couldn't get what he wanted. But now, as long as you nod, I will teach you the supreme Tao of the spear." Yi Xian smiled. "I am a swordsman." The phantom said in a deep voice, "There is no conflict. You can also dual cultivate spear and sword." Yi Xian was speechless. The phantom sighed in a low voice. "Young man, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you have to grasp it." Yi Xian hesitated, and then said, Senior, this friend I am looking for is a spear user. She was here just now, why didn't Senior give her the inheritance? The phantom sighed again, she doesn't need it. Yi Xian, the phantom looked at Yi Xian, young man, I am really powerful, won't you consider it? Yi Xian was a little curious, Senior, why did you choose me? The phantom said in a deep voice, although your realm is low, your aura is very strong, especially your physical body, it has surpassed your realm. Your foundation is too good. Almost perfect. Yi Xian was a little curious, Senior, are you still alive or, the phantom said in a low voice, dead? Yi Xian was slightly surprised, and then said, Senior's strength is so strong. The phantom shook his head, young man, you should be from the outside and don't know the history of this world. Do you know what happened in the great wilderness? Yi Xian shook his head, I really don't know, I only know that something happened in this world, and then this world's civilization disappeared. The phantom sighed, and didn't say anything. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, was there a war in this world before? The phantom nodded, a great war, an unprecedented great war. That time, everyone in the great wilderness put down all grudges and joined hands to fight against the enemy. That time, countless geniuses fell. I was one of them. Yi Xian frowned slightly, is Senior at the Boundless Realm? The phantom nodded, Peak Boundless Realm. Peak Boundless Realm died in battle. Yi Xian was silent. At this time, the phantom said again, at that time, how many Boundless Realm powerhouses died in the great wilderness? 99%. Not only Boundless Realm powerhouses, but also many powerhouses above the Boundless Realm died. In that battle, more than 90% of the people in the great wilderness died, and they haven't recovered to this day. Yi Xian was a little curious, Senior, who were your opponents? The phantom's voice became a little solemn, Spirit Demon Race. Spirit Demon Race. Hearing that, Yi Xian frowned. Just now, that spirit vein even wanted to eat him. The phantom was about to speak, but at this time, he seemed to sense something, and suddenly turned his head, frowning slightly, young man, your friend is in danger. 3 sky demons are attacking her together. At this point, he seemed to have discovered something, and his pupils suddenly constricted, how is that possible? Little guy, go quickly, or else she'll be in danger. Hearing that, Yi Xian's eyes immediately turned cold, if Shaoan loses a hair, I'll slaughter the entire spirit demon race. As his voice fell, he directly disappeared at the end of the horizon. Chapter 2187. In a mountain range. And Lanxiao stood with her spear in hand. Not far from her stood 3 spirit demons. 3 boundless realms. In the spirit demon clan, sky fiends were considered a very high-level existence. And Lanxiao's expression was calm, and there wasn't a trace of fear in her eyes. At this moment, the heavenly demon in the lead suddenly said greedily, this woman is really not bad, if we can eat her, it will be a great tonic. Beside him, the other heavenly demon's eyes flickered with a strange light. Go Mang, don't you think that this woman is very good looking? The heavenly demon named Go Mang laughed. Ling Yu, I know you like this. Don't worry, I won't kill her. After I cripple her, I'll let you enjoy her first. Ling Yu smirked. Thank you. Go Mang roared with laughter. In the next moment, he suddenly vanished on the spot. In an instant, a black ray of light appeared directly in front of Lanxiao, and its formidable force instantly caused the space where Lanxiao resided to become illusory. And Lanxiao was expressionless as he directly stabbed out with his spear. Simple and direct. Boom! The black light shattered, and Go Mang instantly retreated thousands of feet away. As soon as he stopped, a long spear suddenly pierced through the air. Go Mang's expression instantly changed. He waved his right hand, and a huge black energy shield appeared in front of him. Bang! The spear arrived, and the shield was instantly shattered. In the next moment, Go Mang retreated explosively once more, and he just retreated when another spear stabbed towards him. Chi! The sharp sound was deafening. A wisp of a vicious expression flashed in Go Mang's eyes. He folded his hands together before pressing them forward, and then a formidable black light surged out explosively from within him like a tide. In an instant, the mountain range in the surroundings started seething, and then it shattered and was obliterated. Boom! When the spear arrived, the black light instantly shattered. Go Mang's pupils shrank to the size of needles. He was just about to flee when a spear pierced through his heart. Chi! Fresh blood gushed out from the tip of the spear. Go Mang looked at Enlancio in disbelief. You! He hadn't finished speaking when Enlancio suddenly flew up and kicked Go Mang's throat. Bang! Go Mang's head was directly shattered, his soul destroyed. Enlancio pulled out her spear and turned to look at the dumbfounded Ling Yu with a calm expression. Meanwhile, Enlancio suddenly vanished on the spot. It was as fast as lightning. In the distance, Ling Yu's expression turned grim, and he turned around and fled. When he saw Go Mang die so easily at Enlancio's hands, he'd lost all desire to fight. Run! This woman was too terrifying. I've got the wrong person. However, just as he fled, a long spear directly arrived behind him. Ling Yu was horrified in his heart. He hurriedly turned around and suddenly smashed his fist down. This punch caused the expanse of space in front of him to sink down. At the same time, a strand of formidable force instantly enveloped the spear in Enlancio's hand. Boundless power. However, the spear in Enlancio's hand easily shattered the boundless force that Ling Yu released, and in the next moment, the spear pierced straight into Ling Yu's stomach. Chi! Ling Yu's body stiffened. She looked at Enlancio with eyes filled with disbelief. How is this possible? How could you ignore my immeasurable power? Enlancio had a calm expression. I'm strong. With that, she swung her gun. Chi! Ling Yu's soul was obliterated. Enlancio turned around and looked towards the distance. There was a black shadow in the distant horizon, and it was the last heavenly devil that had fled just now. She was just about to attack when she seemed to have sensed something, causing her pupils to constrict abruptly. She swiftly turned around, and as soon as she did, a shadow had appeared in front of her like a ghost. In the next moment, a hand grabbed at Enlancio's throat. Enlancio swiftly raised her spear to block it. Bang! Enlancio's figure was instantly blasted flying into an unknown spatial abyss. This unknown spatial abyss was pitch black and deep, and it emanated an extremely terrifying devouring energy. After she entered this place, Enlancio's brows knit together slightly because she noticed that the devouring energy was ceaselessly devouring her body and soul. Enlancio was about to leave when the shadow from before appeared in front of her once more. Enlancio's pupils constricted abruptly, and she suddenly stabbed forcefully. This spear strike was like a bolt of lightning that carried monstrous might. However, this terrifying spear strike was directly clamped between two fingers. 2 fingers. Enlancio's pupils constricted abruptly while a wisp of a savage expression flashed through her eyes, and then she suddenly spun the spear in her hand. Bang! In an instant, the shadow was blasted 3 kilometers back. A trace of surprise flashed through the shadow's eyes. You're merely at the eternal realm, yet you actually possess such strength. Enlancio stood there with the spear in her right hand, and she stared fixedly at the shadow. In the next moment, she suddenly charged forward and tossed the spear in her hand forward. Hiss! This throw caused the mysterious and unknown spatial abyss to be torn into a strange shape by the might of the spear. In the distance, the shadow suddenly raised his right hand slowly, and then a fine black vortex suddenly appeared at the center of his palm. Reflection. Bang! The black vortex instantly swelled up and was about to explode. However, in the next moment, the shadow suddenly pressed forward, and the black vortex was instantly suppressed. Meanwhile, Enlancio suddenly appeared behind the spear, and in the next moment, she suddenly kicked the spear's handle. Bang! The black vortex exploded apart. In the next moment, the figure retreated explosively by almost 3 kilometers. Meanwhile, Enlancio suddenly charged forward and stabbed her spear at the figure, and the formidable force of the spear instantly caused the mysterious spatial abyss to start burning. Her strength was too formidable. The shadow suddenly vanished on the spot, and then he smashed his fist towards Enlancio. Bang! The spear shook violently while Enlancio's brows knit together slightly. In the next moment, she'd already appeared over 10 kilometers away. She'd just stopped moving when a fist suddenly appeared in front of her, and then the spatial abyss in the surroundings was instantly obliterated. The spatial abyss was unable to endure the terrifying force of this punch. Enlancio slowly closed her eyes while the spear in her hand trembled violently. In the next moment, her figure suddenly leaped up and smashed her spear down. Rumble. A world-shaking explosion suddenly resounded. In the next moment, Enlancio and the shadow retreated madly. Everything in the surroundings was obliterated. Their strength was truly too formidable. Right at this moment, Enlancio suddenly slapped her right hand behind her. Bang! This slap caused the boundless space behind her to be obliterated. However, she'd stopped moving, and the shadow had suddenly stomped its right foot on the ground. Bang! The shadow stopped right after that. However, the expanse of space where her foot stomped was directly obliterated. The shadow raised his head to look at Enlancio, who stood in the distance. You really surprised me. In the distance, Enlancio had an expressionless face as she suddenly charged forward. This charge was like a bolt of lightning that shot forward, and a spear instantly stabbed towards the phantom. The phantom's eyes narrowed, and his body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, countless afterimages suddenly appeared in the surroundings, and these afterimages punched out simultaneously. In an instant, over 10,000 fist seals blasted towards Enlancio. Enlancio hurriedly withdrew her spear when she witnessed this scene, and then she swiftly swept it. With this sweep, a ray of light surged forward, and then the entire heavens and the earth started to shatter into pieces. Hiss! The countless afterimages in the surroundings were obliterated. However, Enlancio was blasted back repeatedly, and she only stopped after retreating almost 30 kilometers. As soon as she did, a wisp of blood suffused the corner of her mouth. However, the battle intent in her eyes grew denser. In the distance, the shadow's expression was slightly unsightly. He was 2 realms higher than the woman who stood before him, yet she'd actually been able to fight him until now. Moreover, her strength was growing stronger and stronger. How monstrous. I can't allow her to live. He was a member of the spirit demon race, and his main mission was to kill all the extraordinary geniuses and monstrous geniuses that had appeared in the recent years. Because all of these geniuses and monstrous geniuses might become enemies of the spirit demon race. Just in case. The shadow suddenly raised his head to look towards the distant horizon. In the next moment, he suddenly charged forward while a terrifying force swept through the surroundings. Enlancio frowned slightly. She suddenly stabbed the spear in her right hand forward, and a speck of cold light appeared at the tip of her spear. Bang! As soon as their strengths collided, the heavens and the earth collapsed, and space was obliterated. Rumble! An expanse of spear light suddenly shattered. In the next moment, Enlancio retreated repeatedly. However, the shadow in front of her had instantly retreated 3 kilometers away as well. Moreover, when he stopped moving, his right arm had split open and blood sprayed. The shadow's expression was extremely unsightly. I'm 2 realms higher than him, yet I'm unable to do anything to him? When did such a terrifying genius appear in the grand wilderness? If he were to mature, the shadow didn't dare think about it. Right at this moment, the distant Enlancio suddenly took a step forward, and she'd already arrived in front of the silhouette in a single step. The silhouette's reaction was swift as well. He charged forward and punched towards Enlancio. Bang! Both of them retreated explosively once more. But right at this moment, an unexpected event occurred. A shadow suddenly appeared behind Enlancio, and in the next moment, a dagger swept towards the back of Enlancio's neck. And Lanxio's pupils constricted abruptly, and she swiftly turned around and blocked with her spear. Hiss! A fiery red light suddenly sputtered out from the spear in Lanxio's hand. In the next moment, the shadow strangely vanished. Immediately after, a strange blood-red grand array suddenly appeared in the surroundings of Lanxio's head, and then 4 pure gold ropes directly locked Lanxio in place. Right at this moment, the shadow from before appeared in front of Lanxio once more. It was a woman, and she held a dagger in her hand. The woman gazed at Lanxio while a wisp of a savage smile arose on the corners of her mouth. "Woman of the Grand Wilderness, you're very good at fighting, right?" As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly stabbed her dagger into Lanxio's stomach. Hiss! A strand of fresh blood sprayed from Lanxio's stomach. As she spoke, she intended to attack again. But right at this moment, a blood-red ray of light shot over violently from the horizon. It was exactly Yi Xian who'd rushed over. The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, and she was about to attack when the shadow suddenly said, "Lan, don't attack. We've been here for too long, and we've alarmed some experts of the Grand Wilderness. Return to the clan." Lan pondered deeply for a moment, and then she opened her palm. In an instant, 3 strands of light enveloped her, the shadow, and Lanxio. In the next moment, their figures instantly became illusory. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had appeared here, and his eyes were blood-red like an ocean of blood. Lan gazed at Yi Xian who stood nearby and ridiculed. "If you have the balls, then come to the spirit demon dimension and save them." As soon as she finished speaking, the 3 of them vanished completely. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously, "Li Sheng!" As soon as his voice resounded, Li Sheng appeared in front of Yi Xian. Li Sheng was shocked when he saw Yi Xian who seemed like he was covered in blood. "What's going on?" Yi Xian stared at Li Sheng, and his voice didn't carry a trace of emotion. "How do we get to the spirit demon dimension?" Li Sheng hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, why are you asking this? The spirit demon dimension isn't simple. That place." Hiss! A sword suddenly pierced through the center of Li Sheng's forehead. Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Li Sheng's throat with his right hand, and then he slowly lifted Li Sheng up. His voice was ferocious like the roar of a wild beast. "I'm asking you how to get there. I'm not asking you anything else, understand?" Bang! In an instant, an ocean of blood surged in an area of 500,000 kilometers. Countless experts that were in deep slumber were jolted awake. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.